is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of AOS Trash Pandas. I'm your host, Rob, and with me as usual is my co-host, Carson. How's it going, Carson?
It's going pretty good. Going pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing, busy, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb for like 3 hours because we're going to get into it tonight. Thanks to everyone for joining us. So a couple of quick things. Sorry there was no episode last week. We were going to do this last week, and then I had like a big family emergency, people in the hospital and stuff like that. So thanks to everyone for their understanding, all the incredibly kind messages on the Discord. I wasn't putting that stuff out there to be like, hey, I need your attention or anything like that. It was just like, I'm canceling this like big episode that we had planned, and it was for a legitimate reason. That was the only reason I put that on there. But everyone's messages were so nice, and I really appreciated it. So we're gonna go pretty much right into it. This is gonna be a very short opening segment. Thanks for joining us, Bahamut. I see there's a bunch of people in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you all. Get your questions ready. This is gonna be a big one. No Korean lesson for me tonight. We've canceled all other plans. I took the leash off of Carson. He was neighing before the. Yeah,
I'm ready. I'm ready.
His body is ready, and my mind is probably not ready. So we just got like one kind of thing that we were going to talk about before we get right into it, and that is I'm going to cover us up completely. We've got like a little bit of a new format. I didn't get a chance to even look at this model until just before the stream started. She's freaking awesome. I'm not like a huge fan, like I was saying to Carson before the stream, I'm not a huge fan of like that much armor. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, it's not plated like the other Vampire Lord, like the one everyone calls Bat Hair Chick or whatever.
Yep.
But I really like it overall. I love the headdress, and I'm not usually a big fan of those. I love her face and her weapon. It's very like Egyptian Tomb Kingsy looking, which is kind of interesting because this is for Soulblight Gravelords, they said. So this is interesting. Also, it says New Lamia, and that I know is Neferata's faction. So I'll be really interested to see. I hope they're developing the story a bit, right? I mean, I'm assuming because they said that this is for Dawnbringers, hey? So
Yeah.
I didn't get.
There's going to be a new regiment of renown, or like 6 new regiments of renown, or something like that.
Is it
which
6?
is kind of nuts.
I knew that.
I think that's what it said. Yeah.
What? Well, we knew that there was one for each death faction.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. That's for sure. And John says in the chat, apparently there's going to be one for each Mortarch.
I heard that.
Regiment around.
So that's why. Okay,
Yeah.
because there's Neferata and there's Manfred in Soulblight, right? So that's 2, and then you've got obviously Catacros 3. You've got the new one Usharan 4. You've got Lady Olander 5. Is there another one?
I lost track of everyone.
There's Archon the Black, the Mortarch
Right.
of Sacrament.
6.
So that's 6. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that there's more.
Yeah. So yeah, the one you just looked at was for Neferata. So we've got.
That makes sense because it's New Lamia. That's her region that she made.
Yep.
So that's super cool. Yeah, the Summer King, Usharan, the best Mortarch, obviously, except for the Mortarch of Meat, Carson, and the Mortarch of Hype. This guy, we got it covered, baby. Where's our Regiment of Renown? Am I right?
Exactly.
Nice. John probably got it in there. Sorry, I didn't see your comment, John, before I was like, the wheels were turning. I am into the lore. I'm a lore guy. What up, Keith? John, thanks for joining us. So Carson. So Carson, he doesn't like to. That's very funny. Carson doesn't like to toot his own horn. Okay. except in privacy of his own home, of course. But you know, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're actually talking about ogres. Carson is the #1 ogres player in the world. He spent most of the year actually being the #1 ogre player in the world. And there was someone who was like trying to grab it back from you and everything every now and again. But at the World Championship of Warhammer, you definitely sealed the deal. Top ogre player there, blah, blah, blah. And Carson, he wasn't playing the meta. He was doing his own thing. On the channel, you can actually watch it, especially if you like subscribe to the Patreon, which is on there, by the way. It's up there. There's a lot of battle reports, but you kind of like developed it through playing a lot of games, through Path to Glory, and just really digging into every single part of the book. You really kind of figured it out in a way that I'll say it for you, like I don't think anyone else did. Like most people out there are like me, where they're like, I like this thing, so I'm gonna make a list from this thing. But you really kind of dug into every part of it, and so you've made us a slideshow.
Yeah.
You made a dissertation on ogres that you're going to share with us tonight.
I've created a very brief 120 slide presentation to share with you all tonight. Whenever someone gives me enough time to talk about ogres, I will take all of that time and more. So
yes,
that's what it's going to be tonight. Also, I wish I could take credit for kind of the whole figuring out all of the aspects of the book, like you said. I'm going to be honest, the reason why probably I had such like a combined arms, like varied list for so long is because I get bored of painting very easily. And I was like, I'm going to paint one of this thing. I'm going to paint one of this thing. I'm going to paint one of these things. And they're just like, oh, I have one of everything. Let's see what that does. Oh, it's actually pretty good. And then that's when I started filling things out.
That's actually a really great point. I feel like the armies that obviously the army that I know the best is Skaven, and I just love everything in Skaven. I paint everything in Skaven, and I take everything in Skaven. So yeah, that's a really good point. But I mean, you also definitely figured it out, in a way that like most people weren't leaning into. Most people were leaning into monster trucks. That was the most popular thing. And it's still obviously a very valid build, but we'll get into that when we get into it. Carson, do you have any blessings?
I have one blessing from the Meat Dimension.
Okay.
It's a very predictable blessing, but it's the Ogre Mawtribes battletome.
Damn you.
Everybody pull out your Ogre Mawtribes battletome. We're going to be needing it tonight. Even though most of it's outdated. Zooming in now. My camera. We're going to be needing it.
It's quantum leaping into the Meat Dimension as we speak.
That's right. Yeah.
I also will pull out my Ogre Mawtribes battletome from the Sausage Dimension. Oh, no. It's actually Revenge. Cold IPA. Sorry, guys.
Oh. I also have a can of Spam.
Okay.
I have to have meat within, 3 feet of me at any given time. Otherwise, I get kind of itchy. So
yeah, I heard you like put it in your long johns when you go to sleep at night.
That wasn't supposed to be public knowledge.
I'm sorry. Oh my God. That's embarrassing. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah. Anyway, without further ado,
so we gotta buckle up, kiddos. This is gonna be a spicy amita ball.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm just getting all my stuff laid out here so I can actually see the chat. I can see Rob. I can see the slides. Tonight we're going to be doing an Ogre Mawtribes deep dive, otherwise known as Meat Lads for Dummies. Thanks to Goonhammer for that awesome ogre doing this thing. I always love that graphic. Fantastic. Keith says, but Carson, you're made of meat, so you always have meat in range. That's technically true, but we're not cannibals, so...
Speak for yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Half of us are not cannibals.
Company excluded, I hope. Yeah.
So just kind of going over what we're going to be talking about tonight. We've got a 5-course menu prepared for everyone here. So we start with the hors d'oeuvre, which is why should I play ogres? Then we move on to our appetizer, which is just basically what we do in every review stream we've ever done, which is the battle traits overview, with like all of the subfactions, the spell lores, all that sort of stuff. Followed by the salad, meat bowl, which is going to be a war scroll deep dive. So basically just every war scroll in the book, like where does it fit, what does it do, and then war tips and tricks there. Then we'll move on to our entree, which is just common playstyles and lists that you're going to be seeing for ogres that are particularly competitive. And then our dessert, which is just a nice little thing at the end, which is what makes ogres competitive and, what, like, how are they doing kind of thing in the meta right now. I'm going to be taking brief breaks to hydrate because otherwise I will suffocate and die.
And
so,
by the way, I asked Carson not to show me anything in here, so I'm just gonna be like, asking questions like I normally do when I have a guest on. Not that you're a guest, but like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna be I'm the color commentary, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So why don't we proceed to our hors d'oeuvres? Why should I play ogres? You might be asking. As if everyone in the chat isn't already an ogres player. Because you're one of two people. You're either a meat chad who can't be bothered painting more than 6 models because you're too busy rolling boxcars. You're always focused on your next meal, and likely you cannot read. Or
What?
number 2, you're an absolute geed with weak baby arms. You drink diet ginger ale by choice, and you think the double turn is unfair. Ogres are an honest army.
Wait, do I not get to tell you which one I am?
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. You didn't have an answer prepared.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm a meat chad for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I actually don't do any of those 3 things on the right, except for maybe weak baby arms.
You can count. That's pretty good. Halfway to being a geed. Okay.
Sorry.
Another reason to play ogres.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very honest army. What you see is what you get, both on the tabletop and at the rules. There's no gotchas, no tricks, just meat. It's just super, super obvious what ogres are going to be doing all the time. There's nothing complex to figure out.
On his aim shield.
Perfect for the recovering gambling addict. Okay?
Oh.
Ogres are sitting 3 inches away from their opponent. They're automatically making the charge. But guess what? You roll boxcars. An ogre player will be elated 100% of the time when that happens. Every other army, who cares? Right? You made your charge, you do a lap around the enemy, whatever. But this one, right? You're just meat slapping the
that's
entire
interesting.
time.
Yeah, so you're not punished like in Skaven. If you roll really well, you're one of the better armies, and if you roll poorly, you're like the worst army in the game. Whereas here, it's like, well, it's a bonus,
Yeah.
It's like methadone for gambling. I like it. Oh man.
Another reason, everything is a hammer. Your basic battle line, absolute hammer. Your artillery piece, definitely a hammer. Don't come near my screen, they will bite you. And yes, my foot wizard does do 3 flat damage. Everything is a hammer. Shooting or melee, why not both? You can kind of dish out damage in 5 out of 6 phases, which is pretty nuts. You can be doing damage in the hero phase, which everyone can. That's fair. That's kind of a gimme, right?
Yeah.
Arcane Bolt is accessible to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Movement phase. In your enemy's movement phase, when Noblars come closer.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or when you come close to Noblars, they're going to be hurting you. Shooting phase, definitely. There's a lot of damage that can be put there. Charge mortals, combat phase, and the only one that's not included is Battle Shock, basically.
Wow.
So they will be whatever you want them to be. Easily molded into whatever you want. Playing ogres will make you a better player. They're very low mental load. It's an army that hits hard and will let you experience the rest of the game in much, much greater detail. Just because you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what your army does and how complicated it is or pulling off any tricks, you can really spend time learning about like how exactly does piling in work, how exactly does charging work, and then you can kind of pay attention to what your opponent's doing. You can learn your opponent's army a little bit better. I found that it's much easier to play a game as ogres than other armies that I played as just because of that. So that's a big thing.
That
also,
makes
hydration
sense.
break.
And like if an army is simple, you can kind of focus on movement and like other aspects of the game. Even once you're like, let's say you're not a total amateur, you're not totally new to the game, it would still allow you to concentrate on more complicated and advanced parts of the game sooner, I think. Yeah, that's really cool.
An example of this as well is Kipper's Melee, which is the tournament that I won to get to the World Championships. another one of our club members, who also attended that tournament, was usually playing Soulblight Gravelords for the entire season, um, and he was not having a whole lot of luck with them. Like it was seeming kind of rough for him. So he decides, okay, I'm going to take Carson's exact list and bring it to Kipper's also. And I don't think he's ever played ogres at a tournament before, period. And he goes 4-1.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes 4-1 the very first time he takes ogres to a tournament. And he basically said exactly this, like not having that high mental load of having to like pull off combos or like remember a whole bunch of different rules combinations made it a lot easier to just pilot the army effectively. So.
And don't feel bad though, by the way, if you take ogres your first time and you don't go 4-1.
Yes.
He's a clubmate. He's a very strong player, and he's capable of a very high mental load. So don't put pressure on yourself to, they're not OP. If you look at ogres, I'm not sure if they still are under a 50% win rate. So,
they usually sit around like 46 to 48-ish.
Right. So
I'm not exactly sure what they are right now, but that's usually where they are. So.
Yeah. But your point is totally valid. I'm not trying to take away from that. I'm just, people tend to put a little too much pressure on themselves as it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also, just going to the chat because I think next is going to be moving on to another section. Keith says big brain techie players use simple army as like a vacation. For me though, simple gets boring. That's totally fair, but I find that while yes, it can be boring to be playing the same army every time, if you're playing different opponents in different armies all the time as well, all of a sudden, like the calculation kind of changes in your head, and you can learn like what is this thing like opponent doing? How can I accommodate for that? And that's kind of what keeps it interesting for me. Also, I can't read, so I can't start a new army.
There's that. Well, and to be fair, you actually have played other armies. You have Slaves to Darkness, and you were starting Lumineth for a time, and over time you've looked into other armies, and you've really kind of done that. But you keep going back to ogres, and presumably it's not just because you can't read.
It factors in, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anyway, moving on.
Yes.
Battle traits overview. So this is we're moving on to our appetizer now.
Right.
So we're just kind of going through the book at this point, and I'm going to be both reading out the rules briefly and then kind of talking about like some important tips that have to do with actually piloting the armies with these allegiance abilities. So the first up is Ravenous Brutes. Most people know that when ogres are out of combat, they get +2 to move. When they're in combat, they get +2 bravery. Some important tips to kind of keep in mind here. Your +2 to move won't count when you're retreating out of combat, and then killing everything around you somehow makes you less brave. So if you lose a bunch of models and then murder everything, it's actually kind of bad because your bravery is not usually good.
Well, they get like nervous when there's not food, like they don't remember the food they just ate. They're ogres, so they're just like, there's no food around. Picnic, right? Or wait, anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. Next up, we've got Gulpin Bites, which is anything that has the Gutbuster keyword or Gutbuster Ogre keyword. Roll a die for each enemy unit within 3 inches at the end of the combat phase. On a 4+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Important tips to note here is that you don't roll per unit of yours if they're like surrounding one unit. You roll per unit of theirs within 3 inches of any of your units. But that can also work in your favor because if you have one glutton left sat in the center of 7 enemy units, you're making 7 rolls. Like that glutton is taking a little nibble out of everyone, which is a lot of fun.
That is kind of cool, and it's different, and I can see this as something that brand new players definitely get wrong because it's not really the norm. It's not counterintuitive, but it almost is in a way, So
yeah, absolutely. John says, do you think their bravery goes down because they're no longer like mindlessly eating and ignoring the wired battle? Maybe. That sounds accurate.
I think that's sort of the flavor behind it. And Alex says one of his cats is particularly brave when there is food around, but cowardly with no food.
Alex's cat is an ogre. That's it's confirmed.
I've seen pictures.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Next up, Might Mix Right. In general, foot ogres count as 2. Foot ogre heroes count as 5. Monsters count as 10. Important tips: Nobblars still count as 1. They're not ogres. And then Ironblasters can count as 10 with the use of the spell Blubbergrub Stench, which we'll see later on.
That's
this
a
is pretty
lot of
nice.
objective control from an elite army. It's kind of wild.
It is, yeah. In your standard unit, Gluttons are counting as 12 on objectives while still being quite a hammer, so that's pretty nice.
And Gluttons come in units of 6, so yeah, like 6 guys, 12. That's like, that's more than my like a 6 unit of eels or something like that, obviously. And yeah, you can throw your
Yeah,
weight around.
it's particularly nice against other elite armies for sure.
Yeah.
Except Sons of Behemoth. But next up, probably like the main trait of the army, trampling charge. So after an ogre or a Rhinox unit finishes a charge move, you can pick an enemy unit within an inch, roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified charge roll. For each 6+, that unit suffers one mortal wound. Add 1 if the charging unit has 3 or more models. Add 2 if it's a monster. Some important tips. First off, this ability is actually optional. You don't have to deal charge models. You can opt not to. And a specific situation in which you might not want to deal these charge models is, let's say you're going to like Nurgle, and you're saying, I want to clear this Plague Bearer screen in front of me right now. It's actually detrimental for you to be dealing a whole bunch of mortal wounds to it, because all of a sudden he can pick up Plague Bearers, and with the Sloppy Devile Piper's no pile-in shenanigans, all of a sudden you have less guys in range to actually be able to swing. So you can say, I'm opting not to do Trampling Charge. I'm not going to deal any damage to you, so that the guys that I've charged into range will stay in range the entire time. So that's a really valuable thing to be able not to do. And it's also a really good way to play against Nurgle. Second important tip, you roll dice equal to the unmodified charge roll. Pluses or minuses don't count, it's just whatever shows up on the dice. The third important tip, the target does not have to be within a half inch. It can be any unit within 1 inch of a model, so you can kind of complete your charge and then pick another unit that's just a little bit further away that you couldn't quite make it to. That's totally fine. And then once again, not applicable for Nobblers.
Right. One thing to point out too is that, as you were saying, with the dang it, with the charge. Oh shoot, I forgot now. God dang it, I lost it. I was like waiting for you to like fully. I might come up. It might come back. It might not. So.
Yep.
So.
No worries at all. I think that's pretty much that. So we'll move on to Grasp of the Everwinter, which is doo-doo.
That's true. I mean,
basically, this one is like
right
a very
there.
wordy rule that does almost nothing most of the time. But basically, at the start of your hero phase only, so 5 times per game essentially, roll a die for each enemy unit within 3 inches of any Beastclaw Raiders units. If the roll is equal to or less than the current battle round, so it's battle round 2, you have to roll a 2 or less, essentially.
Right.
That enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Important tips. It's your hero phase only. It's not every hero phase. It would be much better if it was every hero phase. I think it might actually be kind of useful if that was the case. Because then you can kind of like throw a Stonehorn bomb in and then splash mortal wounds on a whole bunch of people. Even on turn 5, this roll can fail, which kind of factors into a battle tactic later, because it's equal to or less than the battle round. And then, sorry, I forgot that I put a joke there. Take a shot each time you finish a game and forget to use this ability entirely. Like it's the amount of times where like I've gone through a game, I'm just like, oh yeah, that could have been maybe a thing possibly.
Might
but
have
it's just
done
so
something.
inconsequential that like, yeah, it almost never matters.
The only person that I know that consistently remembers it is Chris, because he's the what do you call it? The he's a Beast Claw guy. Beast Claw Beast Claw Raiders. Okay.
Yep.
I did remember my thing though. You were talking about unmodified charge rolls, and the reason that you brought it up was actually because the army has a lot of plus charges built in. It's built into the allegiance abilities, but it's also something you should keep in mind, because there's a lot more minus charge, half charge. So it's still the unmodified roll. So that cuts both ways, and sometimes it'll be, it should save your bacon. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind, even when you're being debuffed as well. Yeah.
Yeah, a good example would be, I think, Aura of Sterility for Ossiarch Bone Reapers. I can't remember if that's the specific one or if it's a different name, but basically it's like a 12-inch bubble of -3 to charge.
Yeah.
And it's going to, even if you have pluses to charge, like it's not going to offset -3. So that's a really important thing to note. You're not doing less mortals because of it. So
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's like stuff in like the Deepkin lore. I think it's like half your charge. I think it's a spell, so stuff like that. But anyway, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Reformed Bugman says, I have no idea why I'm watching this. I don't even like ogres. Well, we're happy to have you either way.
Yes, absolutely. Watch it this presentation is pretty awesome so far. So I hope you're enjoying as much as I am. I don't play ogres, but I play FEC, which are not
honorary ogres.
They're honorary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, so then we have our the Beasts of Winter Monstrous Rampages. So basically, there's like 2 main monsters, Stonehorn, Thundertusk, and each of them gets like a specific monstrous rampage, which is pretty nice. The big one is the Stonehorn.
Yeah.
So basically, what happens is after the Stonehorn makes a charge move, basically that's like the one qualifier is that it has to have made a charge move. It doesn't have to be within 3 inches of enemy units or anything like that. Just has to make a charge move. You may move 3d6 inches, and while doing so, it can pass across enemy models as if it can fly. And it must finish within 3 inches of an enemy unit. Each unit it passes crosses suffers D3 mortal wounds on a 2+. So basically what you're doing is you roll 3d6, you move that distance, and you can pass over enemy models as you please. And then each enemy model each enemy unit that you pass across, you're stomping them, essentially. So even if you don't want to move anywhere, you'd always be using this instead of like a stomp, for instance. Sometimes you might want to roar or something like that too. That's totally fine, but this is like a stomp plus, essentially. Important tips: the Stonehorn is not flying when it does this move. It only moves across enemy units as if it can fly. Not friendlies, not terrain. So you're not going to be moving across like impassable or garrison or anything like that. You're not going to be moving across friendly units, so be careful about pinning your Stonehorn. So let's say you charge like Gluttons, and then make like a tiny hole for your Stonehorn to be able to barely fit. If his base can't fit over those guys, in order to actually fly over enemy models, he's not going anywhere, unfortunately.
Right.
So you can really mess yourself up by doing this. And it's something that a lot of people forget, I think.
Absolutely. And a tip in general, if you're trying to figure out like where it can go afterward, because 3d6 is quite far, you can theoretically move up to 18 inches. So one good thing to do is if they have a bunch of models, you can measure from the back of the base to like to see if you can clear stuff, and that way you'll know if you have enough movement. But 2 up to D3 everything in range, like it's pretty rare that you're not gonna do this. I think the only people can watch you do it on the channel, but you'll charge in, do a bunch of mortals on your charge, and then you'll fly out of there and go hit some other soft target, and you'll take out like 2 solid targets. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Another important tip: you only have to end within 3 inches of any enemy unit. You don't have to end within 3 inches of the one that you like charged into, anything like that. So one thing that I really like to do here is, and this is part of the second tip, is basically let's say you want to put a bunch of mortal wounds into a really tough monster, but you don't want that monster to be able to monstrous action you back. So you can go bam, slam into the front of that monster, and then usually they have something around them like a screen or whatever. All you have to do is just, fly your Stonehorn as you would, and then slightly and just outside of 3 of that monster, and then all of a sudden that monster is out of sequence activating. So like they don't get to decide when they activate that monster anymore because it's not in combat. It can't do a monstrous action on you, and if it has something like strike first or whatever, you can still later just pile in and hit it before it would actually get to hit you back.
Right.
So there's a lot of really fun sequencing stuff that you can do here, and you can get pretty crazy. Like it's not just about flying over enemy lines. Sometimes it's just about shuffling around correctly and pulling enemies in and out of combat.
Yeah, you actually did that on the channel. You did it with ogres as well, with your double striking ogres, and it was pretty crazy. So.
Yep. That's pretty much that. So all around, just a really, really good ability. Then, so we'll move on to the Monstrous Rampage for the Thundertusk. Chill of the Everwinter. After a Thundertusk charges, it can use this Monstrous Rampage. Roll a dice for each enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit. On a 3+, the strike blast effect applies to that unit until the end of the following combat phase. Only possible after a charge, just like the Stonehorn. It is kind of neat, but as we'll see later on, Thundertusks are just not good. Like
They're
they're
not
just not
great.
good enough to take this for. They're not particularly tough in combat. They certainly don't slap as hard. So
And
it just doesn't really make it worth it, unfortunately, because it's quite a high tax to pay for this one ability.
but what's crazy too is like if you to get the same thing in Seraphon, you have to put it on a Stegodon, and it's a 4-up, right? And so, but you're not wrong. Like one of the things that people seem to agree on is this fact, and so it's still kind of like, man, right?
Yeah.
But I can see taking one in certain lists though to really, you know what I mean, for sequencing issues and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. And sometimes you end up with a Stonehorn in a list, just because that's just what makes sense points wise. You know, you don't have to what's it called? Take like 100%, or sometimes you can't take 100% Stonehorns like you want to in like a monster trucks list, and we'll see that later on as well. So
By the way, yes, please take the time to like. I appreciate that. I made no such promise about shaving everything off except a mustache. Carson would just go into a jealous fit.
No,
my
very
majestic mustache.
I'd be extremely happy. If there were just like clones of me on the channel all the
Shut
time.
up, Carson.
just bald mustache men on the channel. That's exclusively our content.
Yeah.
There's gonna be somebody who's like super into that. That's specifically their fetish.
Yeah. We might not get the comments we like, but
yes, that's true.
It all feeds the algorithm, frankly. So yeah, I'll do what must be done, I suppose.
So now that we've gone through a bunch of those allegiance abilities and the 2 monstrous actions, we're just going to do a quick command trait speed round, just because it's pretty easy to assess them quickly.
Heck yeah.
Gutbuster trait, Reluctant Rabble Rouser, Noblars with an 18, ignore Battle Shock. Pretty good. Butcher trait, Gastromancer, knows all of the gut magic spells. Pretty good. Blood Pelt Hunter, changes all of his ranged weapons to 2+ instead of 4+. Sorry, this would be a speed round if I knew how to speak. This is superbly bad. Just because his ranged attacks are not good, and wasting an entire command trait on that is not great.
This is for like
Killer reputation on the time.
Fluff reasons only, right? Like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Killer reputation on the tyrant. You know, it's pretty good. It's okay, and the reason why it's okay is because like I think tyrants are just okay. So improving one ability on one unit for a whole command trait is a little meh, but it is okay.
I would like to. I have a caveat. Tyrants are okay unless their name is Christopher Crabcakes, and then they kind of rule.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah. Keith Rogers said speedy tongue-tied round. That's exactly right. Yeah. I prepared a whole bunch of tongue twisters for myself to embarrass myself on stream. Anyway, next one.
I can speak well too. Yeah.
Cut the strict trait, ex-mercenary. Man-eaters become battle line. Get 1 CP per man-eater in combat on a 3+. That CP can only be used for a man-eater unit. Yuck.
Yeah.
Because man-eaters are yuck.
They are terrible bad. That's crazy. Okay.
Beast Claw trait, Voice of the Avalanche General can issue commands battlefield wide, also gives you 1 free command. Pretty good. That's a really solid one. Stonehorn Thundertusk trait, Beastmaster, once per battle, use the top of the damage table. Yeah. You probably don't want this over Voice of the Avalanche.
Right.
It's also once per battle, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
You see stuff like Sylvaneth, which is just like always effectively top of the. Anyway.
Yeah.
Beast Claw trait, touched by the Everwinter. General gains the priest keyword. If they're already a priest, they know all of the Everwinter prayers. That's pretty good. Gaining access to the priest keyword is really nice. Just because maybe you want to interact with invocations that your enemy's summoning. There are good prayers that you have access to, and yeah, it's just nice all around. So that's pretty good. Ice for a Hunter trait, Skull Packmaster. He can deep strike with 3 units of Frost Sabers instead of 1.
I recognize that,
even
that duty.
Sorry?
I recognize that duty. Wait, before you move on, real quick, which one do you generally tend to take?
I tend to take Gastromancer just because all of the Ogre spells are utility based.
I obviously I knew that, but I'm setting you up.
Yeah. I'll talk more about that later. Obviously, It depends kind of like what list archetype you're using.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're leaning into Beast Claw, you're not going to take like the one for what do you call man-eaters or something like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, artifacts, even speedier round. Okay, Gutbuster artifacts, Gruesome Trophy Rack, fantastic. Basically, you add 1 to hit rolls for friendly Gutbusters within 12 inches when they target a monster or a hero.
Yeah.
fantastic. That's the one. It's like almost auto taken shooting lists.
In underguts or whatever. Hey. Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Flask of Stonehorn Blood. You basically get like a once per battle ward of 3+ for one phase. It's fine.
Just for the
Splatter
bear?
Cleaver. Sorry?
Just for the bear, hey?
Just for the bear, yeah.
And it can only go on gut. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, all of these are just for Gutbusters. Splatter Cleaver, pick one of the bear's melee weapons. Basically, if he actually allocates any wounds with it, then you heal D3 wounds allocated to friendly ogre units wholly within 12 of the bear, roll separately for each unit. It seems good at first, but the problem is we really don't have any good, like, reliable damage dealers for the Splatter Cleaver to actually matter. And most of the time when you have wounds allocated to ogres around you, like, they're not in a good spot. They're probably just dead anyway. The Fang of Gur, just don't even pay attention to it. It's really bad. Beast Claw artifacts.
Don't even get to read it. There's too much duty.
The Elixir of Frostworm in your shooting phase once per battle on the 2-up D6 mortal wounds to something within 6 inches. This is terrible.
Why isn't it 2-up?
I don't know.
Like,
once
you
per
could
battle,
still roll a 1.
And it's D6, which means
Good
you could roll a 1 as well on that. So this is just awful.
It should be like 2d3 or just give us anyway. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Frost Talon Shard Bolts, also terrible. Don't even read it. Carbolix Frank. Carbolix.
Hey, Frank.
Icefall Yeti units, wholly within 12 inches of the bear at the start of the movement phase, can move an extra 2 inches when they make a normal move during that phase. So they become honorary ogres, essentially. They don't have the ogre keywords, they can't be hungry or eating. So now they can be hungry, which is nice, I guess.
Yeah.
Except it's not, because Yetis are bad. And then the Seed of Algar. A Stonehorn hero or Thundertusk hero can basically carry out a second Monstrous Rampage once per game. This can be good. Like, you could say that, okay, I want my Stonehorn to, like, jump super far and then roar something.
Right.
Or jump super far and smash a piece of terrain.
So they get access to the other one that they don't normally have access to as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Wait, sorry, what do you mean?
Well, because normally you can't... Like, normally the flying one's only for Stonehorns and the Fight Last is only for Thundertusks. But they get to do two things. They do,
but you can't. Look, the Thundertusk couldn't do the Stonehorn one.
Oh, so you can roar or stomp, but you can't. I see. Okay. Okay.
So if you're a Stonehorn, you can do your Stonehorn one and then a generic one. The issue that I have with this is that it's once per battle. So because every other thing like this, except I think Titanic Duel, is on a dice roll.
Right.
So it's effectively kind of a quasi once per battle on a dice roll ability.
Right.
Which is pretty bad.
That's interesting.
But it's got play. I think it's interesting.
You could use it to roar, and you don't even necessarily have to do this one thing, but I would be more interested even if they just got access to the other Monstrous Rampage that they don't normally have access to. But you're not wrong, because like if you look at like Seraphon Coalesced, and like they're not considered a good faction at all, but if you take Thunder Lizards, then they all get 2 per. I mean, I guess that's neither here nor there. It's not an artifact, but still, anyway, that's interesting. I can see it in some lists, and it also seems like fun, to be honest. But once per game is a little rough.
Yeah. I also just think that Arcane Tome is probably a better bet for. Yeah, getting access to Mystic Shield is probably better.
For most armies.
Moving on, spell lore, same speed round.
Okay.
Butcher spells, they're all pretty good. That's kind of like the overall vibe. None of them are bad.
Okay.
I would never say that, I could never point to any one of these spells and be like, you're never going to cast this. There's always a situation where you could cast one of them. Granted, some of them are more useful in more situations than others.
Right.
But they're all pretty good. And just basically like a quick overview of them. Blood Feast basically picks one foot ogre unit, so basically like not a monster, and gives them +1 to their attacks characteristic. So that's really solid. You want your Iron Guts, you want your Gluttons to have more attacks. That's great. Volume of attacks is always super nice. Blubbergrub Stench basically takes your Iron Blaster, which is like a key component of a lot of lists, especially Underguts, and turns your Butcher into an 18-inch aura of Whenever the Ironblasters are in that aura, they are treated as monsters for the purposes of trampling charge, contesting objectives, and carrying out monstrous rampages. An important tip for that is that the Ironblaster does not gain the monster keyword, which means that if something has like anti-monster tech, it doesn't count towards it.
Right.
And like another monster couldn't like Titanic duel your Iron Blaster, for instance.
I see.
But the Iron Blaster still gets to do things like better mortals on the charge. They get to be counting as 10 on objectives because they're a monster and an ogre. And they can do a monstrous rampage, so they could like roar, they could stomp, they could do whatever. So that's super valuable to have.
Yeah, it's kind of like the best of both worlds, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of moves me on to the next thing, even though it wouldn't really matter because it wouldn't count as a mount. You can't target an Iron Blaster with Molten Entrails because it doesn't gain the monster keyword. So Molten Entrails, basically, you pick one monster until the start of your next hero phase. You add 1 to the damage characteristics of melee weapons used by that monster's mount only. So basically, you want to put this on your Stonehorn almost 100% of the time.
Right.
And then Greasy Deluge, you just pick a unit within 18 inches and subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit. It's not amazing. There's certainly better spells in different armies, but why not, right? -1 to hit isn't terrible. Like it's nice to, especially if you can stack minuses to hit.
Yeah,
it's great.
It can be devastating for some armies. Like if you don't have command points and like you're, let's say, FEC and you're hitting on 4s all the time, you go to 5s and you're just say goodnight. Like
yeah,
it's
exactly.
Over. Wow.
Moving on, Firebelly spells. So there's basically like 2 archetypes of wizards. There's Butchers, which are the Butcher and the Slaughtermaster, and then the Firebelly, which is just the Firebelly. Fiery Whirlwind is kind of meh. It's like a what's it called? A Horde Clear spell.
Oh yeah, it's on a 4-up though.
Yeah, but it's within 12 inches.
Oh so yeah, fair enough.
It's fine, but basically the other 2 spells are better in my opinion. Billowing Ash is the one that you basically take the Firebelly for, which is just a 12-inch bubble of friendlies with Holy within it are -1 to be hit, and that's shooting and melee. Fantastic for ogres. Ogres are not a particularly tough army most of the time, so
their toughness comes from their wound amount.
Yeah.
I mean, this is amazing because it's putting it onto your units that you control the movement of, so you get to pick what is -1 to hit. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Super nice to have. I also kind of wish I had access to Tongues of Flame, because it's basically like a Noblar STD. Like you pick a unit within 18 inches, which is pretty big, and then every time that unit moves until the start of your next hero phase, it's the same like finishes a move wording. They just straight up suffer D3 mortal wounds. So
there's not even a roll for them.
No, it just happens.
Whoa.
So that's super nice. I wish I could have access to that. But that pretty much means that you have to either take a second Firebelly or take a spell lore enhancement, which I don't particularly want to do in this army.
That's fair.
So yeah, 2 out of 3. Even the third one is like meh. It's not bad. Yeah. So we'll take that. All of the spells are pretty solid, and a lot of utility too. It's not like a lot of offensive stuff. It's just a lot of utility spell casting. So super nice. Moving on, prayers. We've got 3 that are book wide. Pulverizing Hailstorm, basically like pick a point on the battlefield within 18 inches, and then it's like a 3-inch bubble. Everything within that 3-inch bubble on a 2+ suffers D3 mortal wounds. It's damage, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's not bad. Keening Gale is nice. Adding 3 inches to your move characteristic for monsters and Mournfang packs is super nice. Not that you really need help moving a lot, but like moving 17 with a Stonehorn is pretty sweet.
Good
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's an aura as well. Or no, sorry, it's not an aura. It's you pick one. That was wrong. Ignore me. Call of the Blizzard. Next slide. Mount trait. We have the Stonehorn mount traits. We've got Metal Cruncher. Big thumbs up. Basically, you pick one enemy unit with a save characteristic of 3 or better, or an enemy war machine. Doesn't have to have save characteristic or 3 or better. Just has to be a war machine. And then it just takes D6 mortal wounds at the start of the combat phase.
Each combat phase. Yeah, wow.
So if you are going into an army that's like really scary, like let's say you're going to OBR, you stack a whole bunch of buffs on this like one stone horn so that it's super tough, it's probably not going to die in combat, and then just plop it in the direct center of a whole bunch of OBR stuff. It's going to be dealing d6 mortal wounds to almost everything, which is pretty sweet.
Wait, so it's everything in range?
I don't know why I said that.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a brain fart. You pick one.
Okay, you pick one. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not on there. It's not on there. So I was in.
Yeah. No, it is on there. You pick one.
Okay.
Belligerent Charger. Exactly. Alex says that Metal Cruncher is the best mount trait you'll never take.
Yeah, exactly.
Later.
Yeah.
Belligerent Charger is terrible. So it is. You treat charge rolls of less than 7 as 7, only for the purposes of trampling charge.
Moving right along.
So let me explain why that's bad. Because like some people will say, "Oh, I treat it as 7. That means I can get my charges easier." No, it's only trampling charge, which means there's a very small window of which this actually matters.
You're a gentleman and a scholar for even explaining it, Carson.
The only window in which it matters, because think about it this way: your Stonehorn, let's say, is like you're usually not just outside of 3 to get a charge. Usually you're like 5 or 6 or something like that, right? So there is a chance that you can actually fail a charge on like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 roll on a charge or something like that.
Yep.
In that situation, this mount trait is useless if you fail the charge anyway. The only way that this mount trait actually does anything is if you charge well enough to still make the charge, but not so well that you roll the 7 or better.
Yeah, it's
so there's like a range of like 4 to 7-ish on the dice where this actually matters, and even if it does, it's like, congrats, you're adding 1 or 2 more dice to your roll.
I can fix this and make it like not complete duty. Just add 4 to the value of your trampling charge. Like it's, and then it's like, well, if I roll hot, then I get even more. You know what I mean? But this, this is like, this might as well be not present.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Rockmane Elder, subtract 1 from wound rolls against this unit, both shooting and melee.
Excellent. This is what you're taking.
You take this basically this is like your mate. Like if you have a general that's a Stonehorn, if you have 1 Stonehorn, you're taking this.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
100% of the time. Yeah.
-1 to wound is crazy because like not a lot of armies have access to +1 to wound, and if they do, it's usually just +1. So you're basically negating that +1 that they had.
Also, it's against shooting.
Nice. Also against shooting. So that's one nice thing as well.
I was taking this on my vampire, and it's only for melee. It's only if you're within like 3 inches of them now or something. So yeah.
Exactly. Like a specific example for against shooting lists. One thing that I like to do when I'm playing against Voithan Sharks is the rest of my army is super far back. The Stonehorn is super far forward. Sharks shooting into a Stonehorn, I'm happy because they're Ren 1, so I'm on a 3-up at worst with all up defense.
Yeah.
And then -1 to wound is even worse. So like they have no way of being +1 to wounded. If they do, it's just 1 shark.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get like maybe 3-4 damage onto the Stonehorn with like all of the sharks in the list. And if they decide to shoot whatever's behind the Stonehorn, you just move the Stonehorn up and absolutely murder stuff. So yeah, it's an excellent way to make your Stonehorn like a tar pit. Moving on, Thundertusk mount traits. Flesh Breed, heal D3 wounds at the start of the hero phase if this unit is in combat.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Meh.
Ramfrost Hide. Charge rolls. Wait, what? It's a 5-up ward. I don't know why it says that. Sorry. That's
yeah, I was like, what? Right on.
Yeah. That's my bad.
Oh, by the way, this entire slideshow, including the corrected information, will be available on the Patreon. It'll be available on the Patreon pretty quick, and then on top of that, we will be releasing it to the general public pretty soon as well. But yeah. 5-up ward is pretty good.
Yes. It's a 5-up ward. I think that's the best one, in my opinion. Basically, it just gets your Thundertusk to be, super tough like the rest of your Stonehorns are.
Right.
It sucks that you have to waste a mount trade on that, but
yeah.
Hey, why not?
But, I can definitely see, like, in a lot of lists, even in other armies, but in this army especially, instead of taking another, what do you call it? Like an artifact, you could take another mount trait, and then you've got a Thundertusk, guy, and then you've also got your Stonehorn general. But
Yep. Matriarch is just add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Thunder Tusks within 12 inches. Thunder Tusks are bad in combat, so why are you charging with them?
Indeed.
Doesn't really matter. Moving on, meat gangs,
Yeah.
otherwise known as subfactions.
I've seen this bit before. I love it. It's so sick. Oh man.
Meat Fist. Kragnos has entered the chat. So Fleshy Stampede, basically all of your trampling charge rolls are +1, specifically for Meat Fist Gutbuster units. So this is not going to be applying to your Firebelly, your Stonehorn, or anything that's like Beastclaw Raiders. It's just your Gutbuster units. So effectively, most of your stuff is going to be doing trampling charge, mortal wounds on 4s for Good Ogre units, and then 5s for heroes. No change for monsters or Beastclaw Raiders. Important tip: this subfaction and blah 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 stench.
Go on.
Ironblasters are going to be doing mortals on 3s on the charge.
What?
So all of a sudden, your Ironblasters are like, it's an average of like 5 or 6 mortal wounds or something like that on the charge, which is like, if you want to get Avalanche of Flesh as a battle tactic, like it's a really good way to secure it. Super, super nice.
Yeah.
This subfaction plus Tyrants with Brawler Guts big name also is 3s on the charge, and that kind of created its own entire archetype of Ogre list, which we'll talk about later. And all around, this subfaction really favors like minimum size units.
Right.
Just because like each unit that's charging is going to be proccing these trampling charge rolls. Unfortunately, a unit of 6 Gluttons and a unit of 18 Gluttons have the same average mortal wound output when they charge, so you might as well split them into 3 and get 3 times the mortal wounds. Yeah.
It should be noted that this is your main faction.
Yep.
It's the one that you took to World Championships and did so well with.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this. Mortal wounds are a nice tool. So, yeah, fantastic. Blood Gullet. Heralds.
Actually, can I just point out one thing too about Meat Fist? It actually, doing mortal wounds in the charge phase is actually extremely powerful against a lot of really good armies. Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Night Haunt. There's actually a bunch of armies that can get a 5-up ward only in the combat phase or in the shooting phase, and so they get around that, and it's kind of like a bit of a hidden gem. Yeah.
Out of sequence mortals and damage is always like excellent.
Exactly.
And it's nothing to scoff at either. Like it can be quite a substantial amount of mortal wounds. With that list archetype, you can be doing upwards of like 40 if you charge with your entire army, which is kind of insane.
You have never, in my experience, when you went for your 10 plus mortal wounds battle tactic, like you've never gone for that any time we've played and not gotten way more than that. Like even when you're like, I don't think I'm gonna get it this time, you end up getting like 12 or 14 mortal wounds. Just like, come on, man.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of like a mental calculation that I do before deciding to do that tactic, but we'll definitely talk about that later.
Fair. I like it.
Blood Gullet, basically all of your butchers know 1 extra spell and can cast 1 extra spell in your hero phase. It applies to both butchers and slaughtermasters. It does not apply to your firebellies or anyone that has arcane tome.
Right.
Kind of neat, I guess, but
you tried to make this work.
I did.
Yeah.
I think just that most of the time when you're casting the ogre spells, there's only 4 of them, first off. And then secondly, you're probably not casting like... There's usually only like 2 that are actually relevant even.
Right.
So it's kind of meh. Like, now it does get you better access to like Hoarfrost and Blizzard in the current GHB, but still not... The calculation just doesn't... For an entire subfaction to be focused on just that one thing, it's just... Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and there's not even like... Even if they got like a +1 to cast, then it would definitely change the math on it or something, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Underguts, Shrapnel Powder, basically your Ironblasters and your Lead Belchers are +1 rend against shooting. Or with shooting attacks. Super nice, because all of a sudden you're minimum rend 2 and you can be rend 3 from like 30 inches away, which is super nice.
Yeah.
Important tips. The Gruesome Trophy Rack is basically a must-have for the subfaction because it does apply to shooting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if your opponent has like heroes or monsters or like heroes that are really big, like Catacross or something, they're gonna hate this a lot because you're like projecting Ren 3, tons of damage from like 30 inches away, and you're +1 to hit, which is super nice too.
This was
And also
definitely the
PvP.
day one pick.
Yeah,
Everyone was going Underguts at first.
yeah. When Ironblasters were 180 points, I think,
Yeah,
or 160. I can't remember what they started as.
I think they started as 100. Yeah,
They were cheaper basically,
yeah.
and it was just like oppressive.
Right.
Now, granted, there's some direct counters to shooting in this game, so
That's
this
true.
can get a little bit skew listy, but still certainly very strong.
But even against like Deepkin or something like that, it's like, okay, well, they don't have any cheap units, so you just blast whatever's closest, and then you just keep blasting until everything's gone.
Yep.
By the way, you can check your battle tome to see what the points originally were.
Oh, huge.
I thought you were going to call me a little vixen or something like that, but or something much worse, perhaps. I would have said 100.
I can't read.
We forgot. No, you're kryptonite.
170 points.
170. God dang it! I was going to say it too. Yeah.
So, 30 points less is a significant.
Yeah, that's 15%. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, Boulderhead. Unga bunga, unga bunga. Basically, you add 2 to the wounds characteristic of Stonehorns and Thundertusks. Also, 3 Stonehorn/Thundertusk heroes can have mount traits instead of just 1, and they must be different, obviously.
Oh.
This is really good. You see this a lot as if someone's going to be running Beastclaw Raiders, they're going to be running monster trucks. You definitely want this because +2 wounds is super nice. Every wound that you get in addition when you have like a 5 ward is just, much. You basically get like almost 3 wounds effectively instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good.
And
really
you could
solid.
you could have like 2 Stonehorns and 1 Thundertusk, and then just take all the good mount traits too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why this is. So then if you're running Boulderhead and you have 2 Frostlords on Stonehorn, you have the Metal Crunch for Frostlord, and you have the super tough Rockmane Elder Stonehorn. So it works out for sure.
Honestly, like, and I would be the Beastclaw Raider guy too, for sure.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. After that, Thunderbellies. You made a bad unit faster, so now you can be bad quicker.
This was
I guess.
You know what's weird is they've never been good. They've had 3 kicks at this can, and they're still not good. Like, I don't get it. Like, every time they make a new one, I'm like, they're going to be so good in the new book, and then it's just like, oh, it's the same thing. Yeah. These pictures are the same.
Yeah. I really want this subfaction to be good.
Me too.
Because I love Mournfang. I like the models, and I like.
Totally.
It just feels like it should be, and it's just like almost there, but I just think the War Scroll, they just didn't quite get there with it. So that's why Thunderbellies, unfortunately, is a no from me.
They just need a little more output, I think.
Yeah. Winterbite, you subtract 1 from hit rolls for missile attacks against Winterbite units wholly within your territory. And then also, Frost Sabers, Icebrow Hunters, and Yetis are not visible to enemy models more than 12 inches away. So, it's not good. Important tips: non-visible is not just for ranged attacks. It will factor into spells and abilities as well. So if something has to actually see your model, they're not visible for that. That's kind of nice. Another tip: Icebrow Sabers and Yetis are already not visible though because they're locked away in storage. So you don't need to take this up action. No worries.
For sure.
Battle tactics.
Battle tactics.
So
pretty solid.
I would say we're pretty solid as far as battle tactics go. Not like Daughters of Cain level, but we're okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
So basically, we've got 6. We've got Eat Your Fill, which is you complete this tactic at the start of the combat phase if every ogre unit in your army is eating, so all of them are in combat. An important thing to note about this is that you can fail this battle tactic by accident if you mortal wound something to death.
Right.
So that kind of plays in with the whole trampling charge being optional. If you want to make sure all of your ogres are in combat and there's like 1 model with like 1 wound on it, just don't do mortals. Just don't do it. opt out.
Opt out.
Not worth it. That one's pretty, like, it's okay because some lists will really want to have everyone in combat all the time, so that you're just going to be doing that anyway. Some lists, like if you're playing Underguts, you're probably not really going to be scoring it, because if everything's in combat in an Underguts list, you are not having a good time. Like it's
right.
It's going to be pretty, or either that, or like you're absolutely crushing your opponent essentially. So
well, and it does say ogre unit too, so like your Noblars don't have to be in.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
But almost everything in the book other than the Noblars are ogres, unfortunately.
What about like I mean, I guess other than the
Cross Sabers and Yetis and whatever, they're not ogres, but still.
Fair enough. But I think this is like, I mean, some factions would kill for this, just this one.
Some,
yeah. So I'm, like it's, That's
why I say it's fine.
Yeah. I'd probably go like 45-degree angle personally. Speaking of someone who's.
All right, let's adjust this here.
Can you?
There we go. All right.
I got it. And please leave that in there.
45-degree angle. It's pretty good. Save for the taste. You cannot pick this battle tactic in the first battle round, so it's battle round 2 onwards. Also, my goblin just got home, so there's going to be some screaming.
You know what's crazy, dude, is we never hear her. Like, you're super subconscious, you're super like conscientious about her or whatever. But you can ask the people in the chat. Like, we never hear her. So.
Also, we're talking about my dog for doesn't know.
What? Well,
my goblin.
What about your actual goblin?
Oh,
was I not supposed to say that either?
Sorry. Anyway, moving on.
Okay.
Savor the taste. Battle round 2 onwards. No ogres are in combat. This is like the most auto score non-interactive tactic almost in the game.
In the game, other than again Daughters of Cain.
So this is a fantastic one to just save as long as you possibly can.
You could do this with no enemy models on the field. You can literally just, other than the first battle round, obviously, but yeah.
Also, an important thing to note: if it says at the end of your turn, so let's say you're like, okay, there's like 2 enemy units on the field. I know I can like absolutely destroy them.
Yeah.
There's no chance of them surviving, basically. You can still go after them, because this is the end of the turn. You can go after those units, just murder everything, and all of your ogres are still out of combat, right?
Right.
Now, obviously, you can whiff that, you can fail it for sure, but that's a really, good thing to know too. Like, there are certainly games where like you need to kill just this one unit, and you also need to score a battle tactic and yada yada yada. It's still, it's really nice.
It's probably one that you tend to save for later game stuff, I would imagine.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
It kind of falls into the same category as like Intimidate the Invaders. It's like, it's one of those tactics where you don't want to have to use it early, but it's nice to have for sure.
Right.
Because you can use it at basically any time you want. Next up, we have Avalanche of Flesh. Complete this tactic at the end of the turn if 10 or more mortal wounds were caused by the trampling charge battle trait this turn. The important tip for Avalanche of Flesh, the wording on this is that it's mortal wounds caused. So it's literally just, did you get the dice roll on the dice? We don't care about wards. We don't care if the amount of mortal wounds like actually overkilled the unit. If it's on 1 wound and you dealt 8 mortal wounds, congratulations, it counts as 8. It counts as 8 towards Avalanche of Flesh.
Yeah.
That was a ruling that was held at Worlds by head judges. Like,
it's been held at every tournament we've ever encountered.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, there was one tournament where it wasn't held that way.
What?
And then the TO messaged me afterwards, and he was like, I was wrong.
What? Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it clearly says if you read the actual rule from the book, it says cause. It causes these wounds. And then in the battle tactics, it uses the exact same word. And so, there's a lot of precedents to back this up. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's an extremely, I think it's actually a very strong battle tactic, especially in Underguts. Or not Underguts, Meat Fist, obviously.
Meat Fist, yeah, definitely. Kind of going into that like calculation thing that I was talking about earlier. In Meat Fist, so let's say you have like X amount of units that can deal mortal wounds on 4s. The average amount of mortal wounds you're going to be dealing is 3.5, because you take average charge, 0.4, 0.5 because it's on 4s, like half of the time roughly. So 3.5 mortal wounds per unit that's doing, what's it called? Mortals on 4s, basically. So with that, you can basically say like, okay, on average, it's happening just period, if you have 3 units that make their charges, that 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 can do mortals on 4s,
Right.
because you have 3.5, 7, 10.5. On average, it's like barely in your favor that happens. My calculation is, if I know that I have 4 units that I can get in, auto take this battle tactic.
Right.
I almost never take it if it's 3 or less, just because it's really kind of risky to just fail a battle tactic on like poor dice rolls, or even going like slightly. Yeah. Also, Alex says, yeah, Carson, 3.5 average. Shush.
Shut up.
You can certainly spike, but still.
You can spike, and you know what should be pointed out too, that for newer players or whatever, you can re-roll a charge that you made if you want to get a higher number for your trampling charge. Yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important thing to note too, is that you also don't have to take the charge if you make it.
Right.
So let's say you get like a super good charge on a 4+ unit. You deal a whole bunch of mortal wounds. You only need to deal like 1 more. Then you decide to roll on like the fire belly, which is doing mortal wounds on 6s, and you get like a 4-inch charge, and you're like, technically that makes it. I don't need him to be in combat though, and I don't think it's going to deal any mortal wounds, so it's not going to matter.
Right.
So then you can just move on to the next thing. You don't have to take that charge.
Right.
But yeah, moving on, would you take one of the worst battle tactics ever, in my opinion, which is that you have to pick one enemy hero or enemy monster, and it has to die as a result of the Grasp of the Everwinter battle trait. So that means that A, something has to have already been in combat with a Beastclaw Raiders unit. B, they have to be low enough in wounds, so either 1, 2, or 3, depending on how risky you want to be. And then C, it has to be relatively high battle round, so like 4 or 5 for it to be even like kind of possible. And D, you have to actually roll over their wounds to get it. So it's just like so unlikely and like almost impossible that like you would never take this unless you absolutely have to. Nothing else is possible. Right?
This should be a double down. That's insane. That's actually one of the worst ones I've ever seen.
It's really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't stack at all, right? Like you're not doing multiple D3 wounds to things. It's just if you're within 3 inches of any Beastclaw Raiders, this ability procs.
Right.
And like I said, even on battle round 5, it can fail.
Right.
You can still roll a 6 and then you're hooped, right? So even if you're sitting next to a hero on 1 wound, it's still a 16.67% chance that you're going to fail your battle tactic, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's wild. That's terrible.
Yep. Yeah. So then let them loose. Complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if you carried out 4 more Monstrous rampages. I put it to the side because it really depends on the archetype that you use. If you're running Beastclaw Raiders like monster trucks, it's like an auto complete battle tactic.
Right.
Almost.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to have at least 4 monster trucks, and you can get them all into combat very easily because they're super fast.
Right.
But it's to the side because maybe you're not running quite so many monster trucks. Maybe. Oh. Maybe you're running.
Sorry, we didn't hear anything again. So. Yeah.
In Underguts, technically, if you run 4 Ironblasters and turn them all into monsters with Blubber Grip Stench, this is possible because you could do Titanic Duel, you could do Stomp, you could do Roar, and you could do Smash to Rebel.
Oh.
But that relies on, because you have to pick the battle tactic at the start of your hero phase, that relies on you casting the spell, which isn't guaranteed. And then it relies on all of those situations being possible, so you have to place an Ironblaster next to a garrisonable piece of terrain or faction terrain.
Well, you can still have a Stonehorn too, as well. So you could.
Yeah, you absolutely could.
Yeah.
But it's still like
That's a lot of like you need a 3-up, you need a 2-up, you need another 3-up possibly, and then one.
You don't have to succeed. You don't have to succeed the monstrous rampages. Just carry them out.
Oh, okay. Wait, but isn't carrying out succeeding? I guess not.
I don't think so. I think the wording is that you may carry out a monstrous rampage if it succeeds on a 3+, etc., etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something
to think about for sure. I'm pretty sure it's just opting to do the ability.
I hope so. I really do. Yeah.
Otherwise, then it's really bad. And then lastly, you have Boil Their Bones. Or sorry. Yeah, I mentioned let them lose Blood Grip Stench, Ironblasters as possible. Boil Their Bones. Pick one enemy hero or enemy monster. and complete this battle tactic if you basically refilled the Great Maw Pot
Oh man.
with that hero or monster. So unfortunately, this is one of those. It's like, sure, there are certain situations where it's like, doy, I'm going to do this 100% because my opponent has thrown a monster at my pot, essentially.
Or even a hero, like a little foot hero, and you're just like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
But the nature of ogres, unfortunately, is that you are so aggressive and you're pushing so far past your pot that like almost never going to be possible. And then a very skilled opponent is probably going to not want to put anything near your pot to kind of like not have anything be thrown in. Right. And that even bars like monsters or heroes, like they probably don't want to put anything near your pot at all.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So that's pretty much that for battle tactics. Next up is grand strategies. We got one good one, essentially. Ready for Plunder, which is just like take what's theirs Ogre edition. So you complete the grand strat if you have more friendly units wholly within enemy territory than enemy units. This is kind of a win more battle tactic, but like, or sorry, grand strat, but it is possible. Like if you're in like a losing situation, maybe your opponent doesn't want to be anywhere near you, so they've run into your territory. Definitely, there's been times where I've scored it when my opponent has had just more units than me, but it's definitely a bit of a win more strat.
And it definitely goes along with the MSU builds of like Meat Fist and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
100%. Next up is Saga of the Monster Hunter. You have to kill a monster with your general.
So, okay, and you obviously pick these things before you even know what you're facing, so that you don't even know if they have a monster. Yeah, that's poopy.
Yeah, exactly.
Next.
Pretty bad. Yes. Yeah. On the mod path, this is the standard like complete for ogre battle tactics. This battle, not really possible. Like if we look before, 2 of them are basically impossible. And then 4 of them are really only achievable by Boulderhead.
I don't like these ones. I don't like these grand strats.
I wish it was 3. If it was 3, then it'd be like, okay.
Yeah, it's never 3 though. It's always 4 for some reason.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, man. So that one's not great. And then enough grub for all. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strat if the mob pot was full, and you spent the magic at least once. So basically, what you have to do is you have to have spent it and then refilled it, and it still has to be full at the end of the battle. So we have 3 bad ones, basically. 3 bad ones, 1 good one, or 1 like fine one, I think.
Yeah, I think that seems kind of normal for most grand strats. Like I can't like. There's only a few out there that I've seen where there's like a really good one, like Zeech or something like that. But that's interesting. Okay.
Yep. Moving on. Meat Bowl time.
Yeah.
So we're on our third. This is basically just war scrolls. We're going through every war scroll in the book. I might spend more or less time on some of them than others, just because more, they might not be very good.
You're gonna spend like a lot of time on the Icebrow Hunter, for example.
Yeah.
And less 100%. Time on like Gluttons and that kind of thing.
Yep. Okay. So first up, we've got our arguably like most important, most included unit, the Frostlord on Stonehorn. 460 points for him. Always floshed before bed.
Hey.
He's got a 5-up ward. He's got +1 to his mount's damage on the charge, and the mount damage is the Rock-Hard Horns and Crushing Hooves. He adds 1 to charge rolls for friendly Beast Claw Raiders and himself. Can you hear that tapping, by the way?
Nope.
Okay, good. He adds 1 to charge rolls for friendly Beast Claw Raiders and himself. Unmodified 6 to hit with the Frostbeard means you subtract 1 attacks for the affected enemy unit.
Is that for the rest of the battle?
Sorry, unmodified 6 to wound, not to hit.
Okay.
I'm gonna fix it the real here.
And is that for the rest of the battle? Oh,
combat phase.
Combat phase, cool.
We're fixing stuff on the fly.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, he's got a really good attacks profile. 15 wounds on a 3-up with a 5-up ward is great. He's moving. It says 12 inches, but remember all ogre units actually get +2 when they're not in combat. So 14-inch move is pretty solid, +1 to charge, and he's got that super big flying monstrous action. Like he can, it's bad. Like he can move a lot. He can cover a lot of ground.
He gets around like Carmen Sandiego.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He can deal quite a bit of damage on the charge for sure. Like he's dealing 4 flat damage with his Rockhard horns. 4s to hit is not great, but there's certainly ways to get around it. Crushing Hooves D6 attacks, don't like that. Super random, but it can spike and be pretty good. Always take mount traits in this order: Rockmane Elder, Metal Cruncher, and then the bad one.
Don't take the bad one.
I mean, if you got 3 and you're in Boulderhead, like I guess you might as well.
At that point, take a Thunder Tusk, man.
I don't know. I would strongly consider giving an Arcane Tome, just because Mystic Shield on Rockmane Elder Stonehorn is just like horrifying for an opponent to deal with.
It's so good.
Because that means you're regularly on like +2 to, you're basically on like a 1+ save, 5 up ward, -1 to wound. It's just like good luck, right? And this is your fast anvil and your fast hammer. It basically is like it's like a toolbox in one unit. It's just fantastic. Never leave home without a Frostlord on Stonehorn.
Yeah. You
should be in every list, I think. I think one should be in every list, but I have strong thoughts about more than one later on.
Did you see Keith's comment?
Keith says, "Now I have taught you how to screen properly. Watch me ignore them." Yeah, exactly. The amount of times that I've seen like an opponent, we're deploying, and I'm usually a 1-drop, so they see everything that I have, and they're kind of just like shuffling everything around. They're like, there's a Frostlord sized hole here, and I gotta fill that up, and then they just like spend way more time deploying just because it's so much like to just think about the Frostlord flying over. And like I usually don't even charge with them first turn, so I'm just like thanks, and then they have to move and they have to think about all of that stuff again, and it's just like a lot of mental load for your opponent to deal with.
Yeah,
and rightfully so. Like he's a very slappy, very tanky unit.
He is terrifying.
Next up, the Frostlord on Thunder Tusk. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's bad.
But
if you're gonna take a Thunder Tusk, you should a hero Thunder Tusk. You should take a Huskard, not a Frostlord. That's what I'll say, basically.
Okay. Okay.
So the Frostlord still gets the same bonuses that it did before. It's the +1 to charge with friendly Beast Coiler Raiders. It does the Frost Spear ability that we corrected last time, and subtract 1 to hit rolls against this unit in melee, which is kind of nice. Like it's like built-in Rockmane Elder, but for hit rolls, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
The issue is if you look at the attacks profile for the Stonehorn, which is, assuming non-bracketed, 6 attacks, 4s, 3s, -2, 3 damage, or 4 damage on the charge, and then D6 attacks, 3s, 2s, -1, D3 damage, +1, versus a total of 4 attacks, 3s, 2s, -1, D3 damage. It's like a quarter or less, probably.
So close.
Of the output. It's just awful. Like it's not a.
At least it's hitting on 3s
whatsoever.
It's hitting on 3s.
Yeah. Because think about it this way: this entire mammoth is dealing, on average, equivalent damage to 1 glutton.
To one glutton model.
Because a glutton model is 4 attacks, 3s, -1, 2 damage, and D3 on average is 2.
Right.
So, or I guess it's dealing a little bit more because it's wounding on 2s, but it could bracket to be worse than a glutton. So, it's bad.
Is it 3 damage for its Frost Spear?
Yeah, but it's got the same thing on the Stonehorn. Right?
I didn't remember that their damage was that high on the Frost Spear. That's wild.
Yeah. But 4 attacks, 3s, -1, 3 damage.
But it's 380 points. It's 100 points less. Or
80
points less. I stand corrected.
And then it does have its ranged attack. This is a tongue twister, sorry. Blasts of Frost Wreathed Ice. Say that 10 times fast. Do not use the attack sequence for an attack made with Frost Wreathed Ice. Instead, pick one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to it, and roll a number of dice equal to the Frost Wreathed Ice value shown on this unit's damage table. Add 1 to each roll if the target unit has 10 to 19 models, and then add 2 to each roll if it's 20 or more. For each 6+, that unit suffers 1 more wound. And then basically unbracketed, this has 12 shots. So if you're hitting a unit that has 20 or more models in it, it's doing on average 6 mortal wounds. The issue is that you're not seeing units that big where mortal wounds is the type of damage that you want to put into it. Because if you're rolling 12 dice on 4s, on average 6, it could be a lot more, but like
interesting.
You are dealing on average 2 mortal wounds to 1 model,
Yeah.
which is really, really bad.
I mean, Mortek Guard, Squig Herd, like there's times where, I mean, it's there, you know?
Yeah, but it's not worth it. They clearly, I think, overcosted this ability when this ability is just like really not.
For those that don't know, though, it used to be you just did, I think it was D6 mortal wounds at 18 inches, and you could do it after you ran too.
I think it was almost 12 mortal wounds or something, or 2d6 or something. I can't remember.
Or maybe it was just 6 mortal wounds, and then it was like D6 once it was injured or something like that. Anyway,
it used to be pretty oppressive.
Yeah, people hated it. Yeah.
So I think it was definitely like a knee-jerk reaction to make it much worse, but
exactly,
it worked. Unfortunately, it is much worse. So next up, we have the Huskardon Stonehorn.
400.
He's a priest. 400. Oh! Yeah, so he's 60 points less. So that's why I say you should probably just take the Huskardon Stonehorn.
20 points more. Huh.
Yeah. He doesn't have the Frost Spear, but he has the exact same attacks profile with his mount.
And he has a 5-up ward.
He has a 5-up ward. Yep.
Huh.
+1 mount damage on the charge. He has the ability to take the Blood Vulture, which is basically just like pick something on the battlefield on a 2-up. It takes 1 mortal wound, which is kind of nice to just plink mortals every now and then. He's got his Chain Trap or Harpoon Launcher. It's got that special ability there. I'm not really going to read it out because no one really takes it. But you can read it if you want to.
They don't take it? It's an ability, right?
No, like it's you're choosing between the Blood Vulture and that ability.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Then prayers are... So he has 2 War Scroll prayers. One of them is to heal a Beast Claw unit for D3 on a 3+. And then one of them is +1 to wound to a Beast Claw unit on a 3+, both 18 inches. Pretty solid. So, and he's a priest. You can know like a prayer of the Everwinter too, which is pretty nice. 14 wounds. He's on a 4-up save instead of a 3-up, so not as tanky for sure.
Also, you can take Curse on something with a 5-up ward. That's actually insane.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, pretty solid. So yeah, he's good. He's definitely present in Beast Claw Raiders builds for sure. Then you have your Huskardon Thundertusk, which is significantly cheaper, 50 points cheaper than the Frostlord version.
Wow. And he's
also
a priest.
Yep.
Wow.
Same abilities that we talked about before. So basically, he carries all of like the Blood Vulture, Chain Trap, etc. Harpoon Launcher rules from this War Scroll to this War Scroll.
Wow.
Has all of the same, Frost Wreath Ice shooting attacks and whatnot, just significantly cheaper. So yeah, certainly not bad. It's also worth mentioning all 4 of these heroes are dealing mortal wounds on 4s on the charge,
right?
Which is pretty nice. So because they're monsters.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely see taking Huskardon Thundertusk, Huskardon Stonehorn, and the Frostlord on Stonehorn, and those are your 3 things. You get access to every kind of monstrous rampage. You get in the right faction, you're getting all the 3 good mount traits. Like, that's I'm totally with you now. To be honest, I didn't even know that the Huskard existed. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and having access to a priest in general is just great. It's nice to have.
Yeah, like against some factions, it's almost necessary, like Daughters of Cain. Like that's oh man, yeah. And then like you could take an Everwinter Prayer on the Huskardon Thundertusk, and then you could put Curse on the one on the Stonehorn, and then it's just like this impossible thing to kill. It's just like, come at me, bro. Like you might get cursed, and then like I've got a bunch of other units with a bunch of attacks. Oh, I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah, super nice. Moving on, Kragnos, not technically an Ogre Mawtribes unit, but certainly worth mentioning because he fits really well into one of the list archetypes. He's a War Master, which means he's treated as a general in addition, which is really nice. Yep. He does his Bellow of Rage every time he takes damage at the end of the phase in which he takes damage, according to like this table here. So on a 5-up when he doesn't have very many wounds taken, etc., etc. So it could hurt you, but it also could hurt your opponent. Right. He's on a 2+ natively, which is super nice. The big thing is that he allows destruction units within 18 inches of him 12 inches of him?
18.
Right? 18 inches of him to basically charge on 3d6 and also declare charges within 18 inches. because you're charging on 3d6, it's not like adding 6 inches or something.
Nope.
That still counts as the unmodified charge roll for a meat fist subfaction. So all of a sudden, you're dealing 3d6 dice worth of unmodified trampling charge rolls.
So good.
So it's like super, super crazy. And then you start stacking it with stuff like the Ironblaster or the Tyrant, who could be dealing mortals on 3s. Like you're doing like an average of 7 mortal wounds for 1 unit on the charge, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. And obviously he's super slappy.
He's super slappy.
Fast.
He's like probably the slappiest thing in the game.
Yeah, he slaps hard.
And sorry.
I was going to say he counts as a lot on objectives. As you can see, the mightiest makes rightiest table.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, what do you think about, like, if you're taking, let's say you want to take Kragnos, as I would, like, are you taking a Frost Lord, or are you just taking a bunch of, like, MSU ogres?
So the issue is Kragnos is 720 points.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
so he's like 1/3 of your army, essentially.
Yeah.
Or more.
More.
And if like a Frost Lord on Stonehorn is 460 points. So you put both of those in your army, all of a sudden you only have like 700 points left to deal with.
Right.
Like you actually have to pay quite a bit to get good battle line in this.
Yeah.
And what makes Kragnos good in Ogres is him being able to do like more charge mortals. So you're kind of like the same reason that you want to do MSU in Meat Fist. You want to have MSU around Kragnos too, just to get like more procs of the charge rolls.
That's what I was thinking. You know, it's not how I would typically roll, but I think that's the better choice. Yeah.
Yeah, as fun as it is to have like Kragnos and a couple Stonehorns with him.
Smash Brothers.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not great. Like,
yeah.
And it's not to say it's going to be terrible, but it's not making the most out of him for sure.
I guess there is the option of doing, like, let's say Kragnos, a Huskard on Stonehorn, and then three Thunder Tusk Battle Line or something like that, and then you're, you know, if you really want to stick with like the monster trucks maybe, but yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, sorry.
He's got his Avatar of Destruction thing, which is anytime something would like slay him automatically. Sometimes things are just like on a 5-up, it's just slain. He just takes d6 mortal wounds instead of being slain, just because he's a god.
Yep.
He also has the thing where anytime he makes a charge move, he's got this, you know, he basically has his own version of like charge mortals. It's really good. I strongly recommend you read through it. I'm probably not going to go through the whole thing just for sake of time. And then he also has a 6-up ward, and he basically gets to like unbuy dispel. What were you going to say?
It's like the funnest rule in the game, though.
Okay.
So basically, you rolled 2d6, right? And if you get a 7, nothing happens. Anything else, you multiply those two numbers, you get that many mortal wounds against a monster. So you can do 36 mortal wounds. The most I've ever gotten was 24, and I outright killed a mega boss on Maw Crusher. Sorry, Andy, but I'm not sorry, because you had laser eyes next to him. Anyway, it's like my favorite rule in the game. So
yeah,
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah.
Moving
and what you didn't mention about the shield too is you roll 3d6 against the value of the spell. So it's like it's really good against everything except for Blizzard, and even then you have a decent chance of getting rid of it.
Yeah, 3d6 average is 10.5, so
it's not like that unlikely that
not
you
too
get.
far off.
Yeah. Sorry.
Black Powder's Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. This one doesn't really see play just because there usually isn't a 110 point sized hole in most lists, but it's kind of neat. You know, it's like he doesn't slap particularly hard. He has like a kind of a shooting attack. He just has a bunch of abilities. The biggest one is that he can steal artifacts from heroes, which is kind of fun. So basically, in the combat phase, at the start of the combat phase, assuming he's full health and has everybody with him, you roll 2d6, and on a 7-up, he steals an artifact for the entire game from a hero, which is super, super fun.
And then you also get to sing the theme song from 7-Up, and then it's like, feels so good, 7-Up, right?
Yeah, that's true. As he loses more companions, that 7-Up goes all the way up to potentially a 12-up, which kind of sucks. But it's kind of fun. I think that like he's kind of like an independent little unit. I would like to see him used in lists from time to time. And I think that stealing that artifact could be pretty devastating towards some things. Granted, as soon as he steals it, he's probably going to die.
I think he made the strongest point, though. The monkey has a knife. What more do you need?
Exactly. Yeah.
The other problem, actually the main problem with this guy is you can't buy him anymore. I don't know why they keep doing that. They keep making these war bands that are kind of cool or whatever, and then you can't buy them anymore. But
yeah, I would say this certainly isn't meta, but it's fun.
No,
it's
for
a
sure.
Timmy pick for sure. I think so. Bloodpelt Hunter, not visible to enemies while he's in cover. He can make a normal move at the end of the enemy movement phase if he's more than 9 inch from enemy units. His ranged weapons go to 3 and 6 damage respectively if the target is a monster, and then he thinks he's just as valuable as a butcher for some reason.
Does he once again, does he have to pick between the impaling spear and the skull shatter crossbow?
No, he gets them both.
Oh, okay. So against a monster, but it's only 2 in 1 shot, so you're like
forced to hit. So
yeah. Like just one more shot each, and then he's kind of compelling, actually.
The issue is that he's 140 points, and he doesn't buff or affect anyone else. He's like a single lone unit with like 3 shooting attacks, basically, and then he has the exact same melee profile as an Ogre Glutton champion. So,
I get why people aren't feeling this guy. I like the model, you know.
He's a pretty cool model.
Yeah.
His head is a little bit small though. Moving on, Butcher.
He's got we go on to the Butcher. Look how freaking ugly that. You chose like what's maybe the ugliest Butcher too. Like there's a bunch of these guys on here, and you chose the one that looked like it was sculpted by a retarded monkey with its elbows. So thanks for that. We appreciate you, Carson.
Alex brings up a good point. He says the Bloodpelt Hunter can make his shooting attacks can be on 2s.
That was true.
That command trait.
Yep.
No. If you want to take a command trait just to make a 140-point unit shoot slightly better, then be my guest.
That does sound like the Alex I know, though. So
it does.
Yeah.
I have to admit.
Yeah.
The Butcher cast 1, or 1 cast, 1 unbind.
Wow. What is going on? Why didn't you pick one of the other ones? Like, I don't want to derail this entire conversation. Did you pick it because it's like the ugliest one you could find? Like, aren't there a bunch of Butcher models?
No.
No?
Like he has, like, different heads and stuff, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Am I thinking of the Man-Eaters?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
God dang, that model's ugly, though. Okay.
Yeah, it's not good.
Oh, jeez. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. Okay. I'm recovering.
Anyway, 1 cast, 1 unbind. Special ability where every time you make a successful cast, you roll a d6. On a 1, he takes 1 mortal wound, but on a 2 plus, he heals 1 wound, which is kind of nice. He chooses from the lore of gut magic, which are those 4 utility spells that we talked about earlier.
Right.
This is the wizard that I talked about that can deal 3 flat damage. 3 attacks, 3s, -1, 3 damage.
Jeez.
Great. Why not? That's pretty sweet. Voracious Maw. So he has to choose the Tenderizer or the Cleaver. So you're basically getting more rend, less damage, or less rend, more damage. Voracious Maw is his War Scroll spell. I don't think most of the time you're really casting this, but like it's certainly really fun. Casting value 7. Then if it goes off, you pick a unit, an enemy unit within 18 inches. They just take D3 mortal wounds. And then what you do is you roll a dice. On a 4-up, they take another D3 mortal wounds. You roll another dice, and you just keep going until you don't roll a 4-up, basically. And they just keep taking D3 mortal wounds. And sure, what could happen is you could deal D3 mortal wounds and then nothing happens after that. But there's definitely been times where I've dealt like 12 mortal wounds with this spell or something like that.
At the start, you were always rolling a stupid amount of mortal wounds, and then at some point, you prayed to the wrong meat god, and it just stopped happening for you. So you're like, yeah, got to abandon this. Ladificus made a great point that the Butcher model is 1 mustache short of perfection. I don't know why I didn't see it, but I definitely stand corrected.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. The shapes is your mustache shape. What's this? Maybe like this, and then you just do. You just make 2 of them.
What if you stretched out the what do you call it? The poo emoji. Just really stretched it out.
That's kind of a mustache, right? There we go.
There we go.
Nice.
It's a mustache of chaos.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Surprise!
What?
Whoa! It's time to play. Guess those keywords.
Oh.
So for 50,000 Noblars, I really didn't like that I said that. Which keyword applies to the Firebelly? Is it A, Gutbuster, B, Butcher, C, Beastclaw Raiders, or D, none of the above?
Am I allowed to guess?
You're the one that has to guess.
Oh, I have to guess. Okay.
Or you have two options. You can ask the audience.
Okay. Can I only do that once?
You can only do it once.
Okay.
Or you could call a friend.
Okay.
And it could be me.
I'm going. I phone you up live on stream. Hey, buddy, I'm on this show and I need to. I'm phoning a friend. I think I know the answer to this. I think it's D. None of the above.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yes!
ding, ding. Yay! Oh, it changed from Noblars to command points. The reward is different. Yay!
I mean, if I can get that at any point, I'll take it. That is
50,000 command points?
Yeah.
I'll bet they reset at the start of your next turn. So.
God dang it.
Or battle round.
And of course, it only worked for my first battle round, so yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So, well, bring OBR to our next match, I guess. Sure. Firebelly, as I said before, he unfortunately does not have the Gutbuster keyword. He doesn't really have any keyword associating him with anything else. He's not a Butcher, Gutbuster, Beastclaw Raider, or anything else. He's just like a lone operator. But because of the Billowing Ash spell, it makes him worth taking, in my opinion. He's also 20 points cheaper than any of like the other caster variants, which is pretty nice.
And isn't he 20 points cheaper than the stupid Icebrow Hunter?
Not the Icebrow Hunter, the Bloodpelt Hunter.
What's the Icebrow? Oh yeah, the Bloodpelt Hunter. That's what I meant. Yes, sorry.
120 is the Icebrow Hunter.
Okay. So he's 20 points cheaper than the Bloodpelt Hunter, though.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild.
So you take him. That's
There's
why.
So much utility here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he has that -1 to hit level, which is super nice. He is actually probably one of my favorite of the old, like resin heroes. Like it looks really nice.
He definitely was a more recent sculpt, and you painted yours unbelievably well. Like he looks really good.
Thank you. He has so he chooses from the lore of the Sun Eater, as I said before. The Fire Breath attack is basically like equal to the number of models in the target unit. Then up to a maximum of 10. So basically it's like kind of a horde clear, kind of not really. I mean, it's 2s and 3s, no rend 1 damage, so it can definitely shed off some units. It's not useless. The trampling charge will always be on 6s, unfortunately, because he's not Gutbusters. Right. And then he doesn't get Gulping Bite, also because he's not Gutbusters. But he's still worth it for Billowing Ash.
Just for Billowing Ash. Like, you always have him, and yeah, he's super good. Just for that.
Cascading Fire Cloak is his War Scroll ability spell. Yeah, like it's kind of nice.
What is it?
Basically, what happens is you basically, if he's stuck in combat with a whole bunch of people,
okay.
You roll a die for each of them, and on a 4-up, they take D3 mortal wounds, and then also he gets a 5-up ward. So it's like, yeah.
I mean, the 5-up ward is kind of dope, because people are going to try and pick him off. Like, if you make him, like, the Locust, and you're casting another spell with him anyway, then 5-up ward.
The issue is that, if he's the only one alive, absolutely.
Right.
However, I would rather cast Mystic Shield than this, and I would also rather cast almost any of the other Ogre spells than this as well.
But why is that when he gets a 5-up ward? Isn't that better than +1 to your save?
Well, yeah, but I would want to put Mystic Shield on something else, probably. So if this guy's like the only thing that's left alive, then sure.
I see. Okay. I got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, all around, great unit. Fantastic. Love it. Just going to skip past that.
What was it?
Rockboards, Man Trappers, another Underworld Warband. It's just don't. Don't do it.
They have a model for a bear trap, though. That's so freaking cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. I bought this like 4 years, whenever it came out. Still in the box.
Damn.
Still in the box.
Oof.
Icebrow Hunter should also still be in the box, but he does unlock our cheapest battle line, Frost Sabers, if he's the general.
Oh, okay.
Frost Sabers are cheapest, as in like the minimum size unit is only 80 points, so 240 points to fill your battle line is pretty decent. He can deep strike and bring 1 unit of Frost Sabers with him, or if he takes the command trait, he can take 3. he has a command ability to make Frost Sabers charge better. So basically, they basically get like the Chaos Knights, change one die to a 4 instead of +1 to charge or anything like that.
By the way, Ludivicus, absolutely true. Let's get rid of the game with the metal first, and then we can rock paper scissors over who gets their resin removed first. Yeah, the Skaven players over here in the corners sweating. Yeah. Although ironically though, some of the old Skaven metal minis are way cooler than some of the resin minis. But you used to play this guy in AOS 2.
I did. I think it's because I didn't know better.
Hey, I mean, well, it was a different book, yeah, different game,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And you used the Fenrisian wolves, I think, right, as the Frost Sabers, yeah.
Yeah, the Frost Sabers aren't great models. They're also fine cast. It kind of seems like a lot of the fine cast stuff in the Ogre army they almost intentionally made bad. I think, just because almost all of it is bad.
Yeah. They don't want to encourage people to buy ugly models, and I don't blame them for that, really. You know.
Yeah. Slaughtermaster. So basically, he's also fine cast, but almost everyone converts him.
Yeah.
He is nearly the exact same as a butcher. So he's 1 cast, 1 unbind. He knows all of the gut magic spells. He has the exact same like wheel, so like 6 move, 7 wounds, 8 bravery, 5 up save. His base size is significantly bigger.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to bring up, but it does actually matter for the purposes of like, let's say you want better coverage for like command abilities. You want better coverage for Mystic Shield, for his Great Cauldron ability that I'll get into in a little bit. Like Hoarfrost, anything which is going to be like projecting out buffs. It's nice to have a bigger base size. Doesn't matter a huge amount, but it's still, like 2 extra inches basically, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Going on to the Great Cauldron ability, he basically in each of your hero phases he rolls a d6. On a 1, he takes 1 mortal wound. On a 2, he heals himself and everyone else wholly within 12 for 1. And that's just ogres. And on a 3 or a 4, he picks 1 friendly unit wholly within 12 inches, +1 to wounds and melee. And then on a 5 or a 6, each enemy unit within 6 inches suffers d3 mortal wounds on a 2+, roll separately for each unit. So it's basically like a 2/3 chance that it does almost nothing.
Right.
But because it's basically the same as a butcher, and if we go back to the butcher, back to the butcher, he has maybe arguably better attacks and arguably a better War Scroll spell, but he just doesn't have that ability, and they're the exact same points. So it's like I would rather take a 1/3 chance at getting a wound triumph every turn than the butcher having like a slightly better War Scroll spell. So basically, the Slaughtermaster's War Scroll spell is that you can pick a unit of Gluttons, and instead of their gulping bites dealing d3 mortal wounds, it's d6. So yeah, it's fine, but like there's better spells to be casting for sure. You're not really going to be using either of their War Scroll spells. He has 2 d6 attacks, rend 1 damage, so he can slap a little bit, but most of the time he's just not doing a whole lot. But yeah, overall I really like him. I made the switch to a Slaughtermaster instead of a butcher sometime in the summer, and I kind of haven't gone back.
Yeah, I think it was for the Path to Glory, actually. Isn't that
was a while ago? Yeah.
Yeah, it was that's Steven, right?
Yep.
Steven of the Nine Chins.
Steven of the Nine Chins. Yep.
I remember my lore.
Yeah. Moving on, Tyrant. Kind of a jack of all trades. His wheel is a little bit better. He's got 8 wounds and a 4-up save instead. He has 2 ogre pistols, which almost never come up, but d3 damage is d3 damage. Why not? And then he can deal and take like moderate damage. I wouldn't call him a hammer, and he's definitely not an anvil. The Thunder Mace can cause mortal wounds on 6s. The Beast Skewer Glaive can deal more damage to monsters on 6s. One kind of fun thing is that he caps fleeing models to 1 for friendly Mawtribes units within 3 inches of him. So you don't have to worry. Like if he's sat next to a unit of Noblars, they're effectively battle shock immune. They just lose 1 instead of like a whole bunch because they're bravery 4.
That's pretty good for nice. Like it doesn't have to be ogre units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be specifically ogres. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, he's pretty solid. 150 points is, he does a little bit of everything. And as you can see, like 3 flat damage can be pretty nice. He's effectively like and Iron Gut plus the Beast Skewer Glaive. So, we take that. And then his big name allows this unit to be pretty versatile, which we'll kind of go into. So he has 6 different big names that he can choose from. Number 1 is he's got Death Cheater, which is the 5-up ward. Brawler Guts, which basically treats him as a monster for the purposes of trampling charge. So this is how in Meat Fist you get to be on 3s, because you start at 6, plus 2 because monster, plus 1 for Meat Fist brings him to 3s.
Jeez.
Fate Seeker changes save characteristic to a 3+. Long Strider, he moves 8 instead of 6, which really means 8 instead of 10, or sorry, 10 instead of 8. And then Giant Breaker, add 1 to damage against monsters. Wall Crusher, add 1 to melee rend if attacking units in a garrison. Basically, the 3 that you're paying attention to are the first 3 here.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
If you have a general who is a tyrant, and you take the 2 big names command trait, you give him a 5-up ward and a 3+ save. All of a sudden, he's actually pretty tanky.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it's changing your save characteristic to a 3+, which means you can still access 2s if you're all out defense.
Yeah, or
nice.
Mystic Shielded or whatever,
Yep.
Best Day Ever. And then with the 5-up ward, holy moly. Yeah, that's really good.
So,
and 8 wounds. He's on 8 wounds, for a foot hero.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a really tough deliverer of gruesome trophy rack, which is the +1 to hit against monsters and heroes artifact.
Right.
This is a pretty good anchor for it. So that's a good option. And then obviously if you're in Meat Fist, the Brawler Guts combo is really nice too. Mortals on 3s is always great. So certainly he has a lot of play in different lists. I personally don't use him, but I respect him. So
you tried him out, and he has a name, and it's Christopher Crabcakes.
Yep, that's true.
Yep.
Good old Crabcakes. Gluttons. Misunderstood. Underloved. And surprise cheek clappers.
That they do. My God.
I think this is one of the most under respected units in the army, actually.
Maybe in the game.
Maybe. Because people see it and they're oh, standard ogres, 5-up save, it's pretty bad. But it's 24 wounds on a 5-up save, first of all, which is pretty good. They're moving 8 inches. They've got their trampling charge stuff. If you take the Lookout Nobbler with the banner, it's -1 to wound against shooting, which is super nice. And then if you look, you're always going to want to use the paired ogre clubs and blunt blades. Basically, you have 2 options. You either get 1 less attack, and then for all of your save rolls of 6, you're just dealing a mortal wound back. Or you take 1 extra attack, and I think you should always take 1 extra attack. Because you're basically wanting to delete someone before they even get the opportunity to hurt you. If you're making save rolls, it's a bad time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess there are times when, it will matter, where it would have been better, but taking average army you're playing against average day, I totally agree. That's cool.
And just to prove to you that these guys, so it's weird that just even myself, you can't really parse. Okay, 4 attacks, 3s, -1, 2 damage, that looks bad, but it doesn't seem awful. That ends up being 25 attacks in a full strength unit, and it's almost always going to be landing that many because the surface area is really low. It's just 6 models.
Yeah. 2-inch reach too.
Remember we were talking about the Frostlord on Stonehorn. Would you agree that the Frostlord on Stonehorn was it's a hammer? It deals a lot of damage.
Hell yeah. There's no one who would disagree with that, really.
Yeah, it's a universally feared model.
Yeah.
However, I've crunched the numbers, and in 3 different situations, comparing 1 unit of standard Gluttons for 240 points versus the Frostlord on Stonehorn, which is 460 points, nearly double the points. If you have your max damage potential, let's say every single attack hits, wounds, and gets through, your Gluttons are dealing 50 damage, which is a lot. That's not always going to happen. The Stonehorn is going to be dealing a decent chunk higher. It's going to be 63, I think. I don't have the specific numbers here because I'm a dum-dum. But if...
that's the first
no
graph
buffs
there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's assuming you have no buffs whatsoever. It does assume that the Stonehorn is on the charge. So that is, I guess, kind of a buff.
Right.
But you're not all out attacking. You don't have +1 to wound. You don't have plus damage. You don't have plus rend or anything. That's just flat out, that's your cap. Same situation, but now you're applying it against a 4-up save. The damage is almost exactly equal.
That's crazy.
you're dealing basically just shy of 15 damage to that unit if you're not applying any buffs whatsoever, and it's an effective 4-up save. Now we move over to the maximum amount of buffs that you can put on something. And in this situation, basically, the Frost Lord has Hoarfrost, which means his horns are hitting on a 1 or a 2. He has Molten Entrails, which means he has +1 damage to all of his mount's attacks. And he has +1 to hit and wound, which is possible to give him.
Okay.
Gluttons, they're being calculated as if they've got Hoarfrost for Rend 3, which is only a 1/3 chance of happening, but it's still not impossible, right?
Yeah.
They have Blood Feast, and they have +1 to hit and wound. So basically, Blood Feast would give them +1 attack, meaning the unit goes to 31 attacks instead of 25. All of a sudden, Gluttons way outpace by a bigger margin than even the first graph we see over here.
Way
Stonehorns on damage.
Wow.
Because all of a sudden you have a damage potential of 62 on 2s Rend 3, right? And even if you're not getting that Hoarfrost off, 2s Rend 1 is a lot. Even if you roll a 2 on the Hoarfrost, Rend 2 is crazy too. Like it's a phenomenal amount of damage for like your standard.
It truly is incredible. And you know, Hoarfrost won't always be there. You know, like you're assuming some kind of unlikely things, but like the most impressive graph to me is honestly the middle one, because it's 240 points versus 460 points. So 200 extra points. Like,
yeah. Which isn't to say I'm not trying to prove that Gluttons are better than the Stonehorn.
No, you said at the beginning you always take a flosh.
Yep. Always, because it's got a much better delivery method.
Yep.
It's much tougher.
Yep.
And it's just got more utility, basically.
It does.
So that's why you also take a Stonehorn. But I basically wanted to make these graphs to show you that like Gluttons are excellent for their points. I think they're vastly underappreciated, and I think that you really, they're just fantastic.
They really are.
Keith says, so your Gluttons are the stealth hammer that capitalizes on the distraction Carnifex that is the Stonehorn. That's exactly it. You cracked the code, and if you ever face me in a tournament, you're going to win now, because that's what happened. It's like I'll usually pin with the Stonehorn, and then you have like 4 minimum size units of like Gluttons and Iron Guts coming to actually shred stuff, because it's like 4+ Stonehorns worth of damage there. That's just going to come murder you. So good luck.
And they all get, you know, the charge mortals, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, suffice to say, both are great. You should take both.
I like that there's a slide just for that. Perfect.
It's important. Yeah.
That's
Alex
true.
says the real hammer is the Nobbler that refuses to die. 100% agree. Yeah. Frost Sabers, they die to a fart. They're weaker than a fart. Third fart joke goes here. They're not visible to enemy units while they're in cover. For sure. They won't run away if an Icebrow Hunter is nearby, wholly within 12 inches. And if you have 80 points to spare, you should probably take the Triumph instead. They're just not. They're just not good.
Ooh. I mean, like maybe a backfield objective holder.
Yeah, but they move 9 inches, which is 1 faster than an ogre, right?
It's 6 wounds on a 6-up save.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kicker.
Yeah.
Because you're paying like, what is that, like 12 or 13 points per wound on a 6-up save?
Yeah.
No, I don't want that. That's bad. And then their attacks are also not great. 3 attacks, 4s, 3s, -1 damage. Like, no.
And why do they only move 9 inches?
I don't know. They're just pretty bad. I wouldn't take them. Nobblers, they're the superstars of the army for sure. Absolute amazing unit. Don't even look at their weapon profile whatsoever. You don't need it.
You're not wrong.
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
We don't care about bravery because you're a meat shield. Except sometimes we do care about bravery because you get shot, and that sucks.
So shoot the Nobblers. That's what I'm hearing.
The real thing that matters is the nasty traps and tricks ability, which is basically any time an enemy unit finishes a move within 6 inches of any friendly units with this ability, roll a dice on a 4-up. It takes D3 mortal wounds.
And it's any move, by the way.
Yeah, that's the key here. Is that any move means regular move. It means, run, retreat, all of that stuff. It includes the charge move. It includes piling in. Every time you do any of those things within 6 inches of Nobbler, it's just here's D3 wounds on a 4-up. And I know that high skilled players, like Matthias, for instance, hate Noblars because it's like they're trying to do a lot of movement shenanigans, and all of a sudden there's this wrench in their plans where it's like, now I have to have this 6-inch barrier between me and the screen, and it's just, a clumsy opponent could trigger it 3 times, but a good opponent might not, or they might opt to do something like that. But regardless of what they decide to do, this wrench, which is only 120 points, is being thrown like directly into the center of your opponent's plan, which is just like, it's awful for them to deal with. It's like one of the best screens in the game, in my opinion.
I just want to point out that I've always hated them, and honestly, I've never been more wrong on an FAQ thing. Actually, that's not true. The Skaven FAQ is just the most craziest thing that's ever happened, especially the first one, 2.0. But it did not occur to me that they would keep the 4-up mortal wounds against charges and pylons. It really didn't occur to me. It still blows my mind. For 100, they started at 100 points for 20 wounds for 20 guys, and 120 points is a freaking steal. They're unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, they're fantastic.
They don't have good models. That's like the main.
No, thing. They're parallel models, but a lot of people proxy them.
Exactly, like you. I think that Noblars are another unit that I would take in almost every single ogre army, personally.
Yep. I agree, which is why I do. Gorgers. So
Dewey.
Important distinction. I'm not referring to the new Gorger mod pack that was just released. I'm referring to the old single Gorger unit, which is technically still a legal choice.
Oh, is it?
For the army? Yeah. That's why I'm saying futures now, like, they weren't really good anyway.
No.
So just don't worry about them. They're gonna be removed from the book. That's what's gonna happen. I don't know when it's gonna happen. Maybe the next battletome, maybe the next battle scroll. They're gonna be gone soon. Don't worry about them.
Right.
Icefall Yetis. It's pronounced Yeti. Sorry. 6-up ward, 6-inch pylon. Their battle line if the general is a Thunder Tusk. They can run and charge if they're wholly within 15 inches of the Thunder Tusk. They're not an ogre, so they don't get trampling charge. They won't be hungry or eating or might make fright or anything like that. They're just a very mad attempt at a fast tar pit, unfortunately. Like, their attacks profile is pretty low. 110 points for 3 of them. That's 12 wounds on a 6-up save. Yeah, it's just not good.
No.
Yeah. I wouldn't say these guys are worth it. And what makes their tech better is the inclusion of another unit that's just also bad. So it's just not worth putting in your army. And the models are just awful.
They're truly awful. Yeah.
I hope that GW updates this range as well and gives them a pretty good war.
I hope they make them into the abominable snowman or whatever freaking thing you got there.
Yeah. Snow cones.
Snow cones.
Want snow cones?
Yeah.
Iron Guts. It's down to the Iron Guts.
Oh, baby.
The fine cut version of a glutton. Not to say they're better. Sometimes you just want ground beef. Sometimes you want a filet mignon. Okay,
That's true.
It changes. The calculation changes. They're a little tougher, a little slappier, a little more techy. Technically, they have a lower damage potential. If you look at the Gluttons, their max damage is 50 if they're unbuffed. These guys' max damage is 39 if they're unbuffed.
Right.
But these guys are Ren 2 instead, and as we'll see later, they can fight twice. They can bodyguard for a Tyrant. It's debatable for whether or not a Tyrant is worth more than an Iron Gut. So, especially because you're basically trading 2 Iron Guts for a Tyrant. Yeah, different calculation.
I still, I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree. 4-up save, too, another thing to point out.
Yep, yeah, they have a 4-up save instead of a 5-up, so they're a little tankier. With Mystic Shield, they're on a 3-up, which is pretty nice. +1 to charge, just like everyone else. They have a 6-up Spell Shrug with a banner, which some people scoff at it, but I think at Pacific Northwest Masters, these guys shrugged a blizzard with it, so that was funny.
What?
It can happen.
What? That's amazing.
Once per battle, they have a fight twice, but they strike last the second time.
Wait, one second. I have to... Does anyone know the answer to this? Like, maybe no one does. Maybe this question has never been asked before. But if you spell shrug something, obviously it doesn't have to be them. Like, Volturnos has it on a 3-up. There's lots of 5 and 6-up spell shrugs in the game, right? Does the person still roll the mortal wounds and take the damage on themselves, or does the spell not happen anymore?
I think what we did was we were kind of like pressed for time, so we just left it to a dice roll at P&W Masters, and I think he did end up rolling them because neither of us were particularly sure.
Yeah.
I
Let us know in the comments.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That's like a crazy interaction, and like the reason I kind of want to know is because this is never going to happen to me, but like I take fall turnos sometimes. Like there's other times where I take a spell shrug. So wow. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No
are they battle line? That's the other thing I wanted to ask.
They can be battle line if your general is a gutbuster. So if your general is like a butcher, a tyrant,
Slaughtermaster.
Slaughtermaster, yep.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah.
So they're battle line for you.
They're battle line for me. Yeah.
Oh, neat.
They make what's it called? So $10 says ignores to ignore the effect of the spell. It doesn't say that the caster doesn't suffer the blowback. That's true. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Certainly.
That's what I would have said.
Agree,
$10 actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's fun. If they ignore the spell and then the caster just takes damage, that's pretty rough.
Just like, oh man. And then he rolls 4 ones. You're just like, God dang it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Once per battle, fight twice, as I said. It's a super useful tool. You can stay at a range of your second target, and really kind of like, effect sequencing super well, which is nice. Just like line them up just outside of 3, hit your first target, fight again, hit your second target, and they're kind of like untouched, which is super great. There's a lot of examples of me doing that.
Yep. On the channel, and the 2-inch reach is a huge benefit in that. And you get to fight, on the channel, you literally got to fight before that other unit got to attack you before you did your second round of attacks or however. I'm not speaking.
Even though it was a fight first unit.
Yeah, even though it was a fight first unit, it was, magnifique.
Yeah. Exactly. With all that attack, they'll on average wipe an entire 20-block screen, and then be able to just step forward and squish whatever was behind it. So, and that 2-inch reach is super nice. One of the biggest benefits of ogres is that they have like super low surface area for their damage.
Right.
These are 4 models on 40mm bases, which are less than 2 inches each. It's like 1.6 or 7 or something like that inches. You can easily line them up in a straight line and then just like wipe something, step forward. Chances are something's going to be within 5 inches of that where they were, so you can hit something again super easily. It's really nice.
Jeez.
Iron Guts and Gluttons together are a match made in heaven, as you can see by this amazing visual that I've drawn here.
Was this made by like a professional designer of some kind?
Yeah, visual effects are my passion. So.
Oh, this was made by you. This was not made by like some kind of like $20,000, job from a company that's like, in downtown Vancouver. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. You missed your calling.
I know.
Yep.
I know. Anyway, as you can see here, a common thing that I really like to do is you'll see that a lot of people, the way that they use their screens, and correctly so, is basically they have their screen and then they have like a certain gap area and then they have their heroes behind or something like that. Basically, their heroes are usually out of reach against something that like even would step in once.
Right.
But Gluttons are even more capable of wiping a screen than Iron Guts are, just because it's usually a low save.
Right.
It's usually just more wounds, and Gluttons love low saves and tons of wounds to chew through, basically. So you charge both in. You wipe the screen with your Iron Guts, or your Gluttons, sorry. The Iron Guts easily can step in 3 inches, because the nice thing is that in the activation rules of Age of Sigmar, you don't have to be within 3 inches of a unit to actually activate them to fight if they have charged.
If they have charged.
And the important thing about that is that counts for both of the activations for the Iron Guts. So if one thing you want to do is opt to waste their first activation, if the target is juicy enough at the end, they can just straight up walk 6 inches forward and then attack something, essentially.
They would only get one attack then. It should be pointed.
They would only get one attack, yeah.
But still,
if something, let's say like the Yummy Heroes are 6 inches behind the screen and the Iron Guts are there, the Iron Guts can say, okay, we're going to fight first. They move towards the Yummy Heroes. They're outside of 3 inches because they don't want to get hit first. And then they say, okay, we're going to attack again, but they're going to strike last to do so. So all of the other fights will happen, like all of the other activations are resolved. After that happens, Iron Guts go again. step into the yummy heroes and slap. It's great.
Right.
So yeah, simple 3 or 4 step plan. As I said here, you can wipe your screens, step forward, and this low surface area really works to your advantage here. You can sometimes weave between screens, which is super nice. So it's great.
Also, you can like, you know, like the only thing that's going to stand in your way is if the screen doesn't get wiped for some reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty unlikely for most armies, but yeah.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, then you use your first activation to wipe the screen and then step in and same thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
So lots of fun stuff you can do there.
Whew.
Lead Belchers, otherwise known as the Underguts battle line tax. If they didn't move in their previous, so basically they have a shooting attack and a melee attack. Their melee attack is a little not great. It's what's it called? 2 attacks, 3s, 3s, no rend, 2 damage. And then their shooting attack is D3 attacks, 18 inches, 4s, 3s, rend 1, 1 damage. Underguts will change that rend 1 to rend 2, which is pretty nice. And then another thing is that if they didn't move in your previous movement phase, the guns are 2 D3 shots instead of D3. And then keep in mind that it'll still be D3 shots in Unleash Hell in your opponent's turn if you did move in your previous turn.
Right.
So you won't be getting 2 D3 just because you're standing still in that one turn.
It just says because it says in your shooting phase, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it says that if you'd moved your previous turn, that it's if you haven't moved your previous turn, you get 2 D3 shots.
Oh, okay.
Because it would have been your
So you would get it in when you're unleashing hell.
You would not.
Oh,
okay. So what would happen is that it's your turn.
Yeah.
You move.
Yeah.
So you only get D3 shots. It's your opponent's turn. They charge. You unleash hell. You only get D3 shots.
Okay.
If in your turn you don't move,
yeah, D6.
You get 2 D3 shots.
And
then if your opponent charges you, you unleash hell. You still get 2 D3
Oh,
shots.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
I actually didn't misunderstand there for a second. That's
Okay.
awesome. I just wanted to point out that what's up, Sean? He said good looking meat, and he was saying good evening, and Tenbuck pointed out, as did I, the 2-inch range makes it like basically an 8-inch, total attack range that you could put on that. And
it's really difficult to ignore, for sure.
And the most important thing though is what is the most delicious hero? And he said, "Don't you dare say goblins."
That's the problem.
That's the problem. It is.
Because the issue is that it's like 4 or 5 wounds on a terrible save. So one iron
4 wounds on a
it just like eats it, right?
Yeah. They taste like shiitake. Take it as a compliment, Ledivicus. Okay.
Goblins, skinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that's just like 4 or 5 wounds is just perfect.
Right on.
Love it.
That's
Cities of Sigmar is going to be great. Yeah.
Eric says like a single skink surviving on his 5 of ward.
Yeah.
That's less delicious.
Yep. So these guys, one important thing is that they're 160 points for 4 of them. So they're one of the cheapest ways to access Trampling Charge of Mortals on 4s in Meat Fist. So you could spam them if you just want to get more mortal wounds, and certainly we see them in Kragnos lists sometimes. Because they can be battle line if your general is Gutbuster as well. So that's, it's pretty solid. They're not particularly amazing. They have their uses, but they're certainly not like the mainstay of the army, for sure.
Right.
And then also they have the exact same wheel as a glutton.
They're like, they do seem like an interesting choice in Underguts. Like,
Yep.
It's kind of like a build dependent, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're just cheaper, which is, it's nice.
And 2 damage on their melee attacks. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at, man.
Yeah. Man-Eaters, GW will make them good after they refresh their models.
Maybe.
But the issue is that they're not Gutbusters. They don't get charge roll bonus. They attack just about as well as Gluttons, but more points.
Yeah.
They're just very mediocre all around, so I'm not going to spend much time on these guys.
Just make a new unit. Oh.
Surprise again!
Oh my gosh! It's happening!
Just kidding, it's a meme this time.
Oh.
So you're an ogre, yep. That's a Rhinox, yep. Okay, and you're riding the Rhinox, yep. So you have the Rhinox keyword? No. Morn Fangs. They don't have Rhinox.
What?
It kind of sucks. They kind of like have weaved between some keywords, which is kind of unfortunate. Like obviously they don't get Gutbusters because they're these Claw Raiders. But they don't get Rhinox, so like Blubbergrub Stench can't affect them, which is unfortunate because then it would be nice to have a butcher be able to cast Blubbergrub Stench and have them do 3 mortals on 3s outside of Meat Fist.
Yeah.
That would make them pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, those Rhinox are not true Rhinox, so they don't get to do that. They get +1 to charge with their musician. Also, for reference, it's 170 points for 2 of them. They're on quite large bases, but they're 6 wounds on a 4-up save, so not bad. They move 9 inches, but they do get hungry and eating, so they're realistically moving 11 inches most of the time, which is quite fast.
Yeah.
They are -1 to wound against shooting attacks, and then Unleash Hell actually only wounds on 6s against them. So,
and for the people that don't know, they're the units that look sort of like saber-toothed tiger cat things. You've got the SpongeBob picture there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they used to come in the start collecting set for Beastclaw Raiders, and yeah,
they still come in the Vanguard actually.
Oh, cool. And they are 6 wounds each, so that's so they do. Oh wait, no, they count as more anyway, don't they?
They'll count as 2 each.
Oh, okay, they just count as 2.
So,
never mind.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate too, is that they don't count as more.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have 2 weapon options. They have the Gargan Hackers, which are basically like higher rend, higher damage, but hitting on 4s, less attacks. And then they have the Calling Club and Iron Fists, which is probably the right choice for them, which is just 3 attacks, rend 1, 2 damage. And then they have the Iron Fists, which are like the 6s or mortals whenever you do a save roll. So they're kind of interesting. They're just like not quite there. There's a little bit of keyword shenanigans going on, which kind of sucks.
And do they always get the pistol shots?
So the pistol is just for the champion. Sorry, I should have
said
that.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wild.
So the champ. So there's going to be 1 pistol shot for the entire unit. And then what's going to happen is you get to pick either the Calling Club or Prey Hackers, or the Gargan Hackers, and then their mounts will have the Tusk attacks. So
what a strange design,
Yeah.
And the Morn thing packs, like the mounts have those cool looking tusk things, so you think they would do pretty good mortals on the charge, but no.
Nope, unfortunately not. Yeah, these guys can be battle line in Beastclaw Raiders if the general is a Beastclaw Raider, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But so basically, they're like your cheap battle line tax as well in Beastclaw Raiders.
Yeah,
it's like,
170 points is not bad. Like, for 12 wounds, on a 4-up, that's pretty mobile. Like, I could see putting one of them in there just for a mobile sort of anvil, But yeah, okay, interesting.
Yeah, they certainly get used, but it's mostly to fill gaps and not as like a mainstay. So.
Totally, yeah.
Gorger Mod Packs. These are like the new ones that have just been released. So they, as the picture kind of denotes, they can deep strike outside of 9 inches. And then the special rule that they have is that there's 1 model in the unit called a Cave Howler. Sorry, I was going to say Screamer. Cave Howler, which is each time an enemy unit receives a command within 12 inches of the Cave Howler model, on a 5-up, the command is not received, or the command point is still spent. So that's pretty fun. That's a nice tech piece. Catacross might not hear himself because you're screaming too loud, which is excellent lore-wise.
Does he talk to himself? Like, hey, Catacross, you better fight better. And then he says,
well, his like Supreme Lord of the whatever, like his +1 to hit and save aura is a command ability that he issues to himself.
Oh, Catacross, right. I was thinking of Kragnos for some reason.
No.
Right.
No.
That is crazy.
So yeah, that's pretty fun. That's a nice tech piece. They come in a unit of 5 for 220, so they're basically 20 points cheaper than the standard like Iron Gut or Glutton Choice. So you're basically looking at 30 wounds on a 6-up save, which is like, it's 6-up is really not great.
No.
But 30 wounds is okay. They're just pretty paper thin, which kind of sucks. Their attacks profile it's fine. It's not as good as a Glutton, because Gluttons are 4 attacks instead of 3 attacks. So this unit is getting like I think 30 or 40% less damage output than a Glutton unit would be, which isn't great. They don't have +1 to attack, or +1 to charge. Sorry. So when they're coming out of deep strike, it's just you just got a hot roll a 9. And an important thing to remember about rolling a 9 is that if you can re-roll it, it's essentially a coin flip. So it's like a 50-50 chance that like you're gonna get the charge or you're not. So you really shouldn't bank on it, I guess, is the big thing.
Right. I guess you're you can, but it is a tech piece, like you said. You can put them somewhere where people are like really worried about getting commands off or something like that, and or grabbing objectives, etc., etc. That's interesting.
Yeah. They're also, so it's 16 attacks for the unit, so it's like a 32 damage potential unit, which is, it's not bad.
No,
right?
No.
And 3's rend 1, getting that through is not terrible either. And because they're Gutbusters, they get, in a Meat Fist list, they're doing mortals on 4s. So on average, if they're making their 9-inch charge, it's going to be 4.5 mortals on average, right?
Wow.
So like they're not pillow-fisted.
No. And they're 5 wounds each, so they all count as 2 each. So that's something to point out.
And another thing to keep in mind is that these guys can be used in a pinch as a surprise screen. So let's say it's like, okay, I have my Noblars, but my opponent's going to chew through those and hit me real hard anyway. You can have these guys pop up in front of those even, and they can actually seal off a 13-inch gap, which is pretty big. Granted, you're basically sacrificing them to do so.
Yeah.
But then the rest of your army is just coming and hitting them, or hitting whatever you want. Like they're just like a super mobile screen, which is pretty nice. I've been experimenting with these guys, and basically what I've been doing is like replacing one unit of Gluttons with them, and I don't have the same amount of reps with them as I do Gluttons, obviously. But I found them to be like, sometimes they're excellent, especially if they like make their charge or whatever. But even just as another distraction for your opponent to think about, because you can drop them behind your opponent and then just not necessarily do anything with them. Then there's 30 wounds that can actually deal significant damage just sitting in their backlines that they all of a sudden have to allocate something to deal with. And it's very rare that an army is going to be able to do that unpunished, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's like, sure, you can allocate a hammer to take care of this, but they're going to be behind you, and that's not really where you want to be against me.
And if you don't do enough damage, you can risk losing whatever you're sending in there to kill them.
Yep.
They fight too deep because they have a 2-inch range and they have a 50mm base.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So I quite like these guys. I think it's an interesting tech piece that, gives ogres access to something that we didn't previously have. So I like it. Whether it spreads me too thin is another thing. Like it's really nice having 2 units of Gluttons instead of 1, but we'll see.
And the Gluttons were 220 as well, or 240?
240. So it also
20 points over, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, and you get a triumph bit, which is pretty nice.
That's true. Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that even though I played several games where I could have gotten the triumph, I've forgotten it every single time. So you should remember that for sure. But
that's why AOS Coach used to always say, "Remember your triumph" at the end of the show. Yeah. I'm gonna grab some water. You keep moving.
Actually, you know what? Now is a good time to just do a water break. I'm gonna grab some water also.
Okay. I was gonna keep the troops entertained. Got to keep the water going though. Talking for over 2 hours straight. Especially hard on Carson because he's doing most of the talking here. Yeah. By the way, if you guys have questions, don't forget to ask. I know there was some Patreon questions that we can't forget that was sent in ahead of time. He might have incorporated it into the slideshow, but we can. And if you guys are not already in the Discord, please join. You can talk to Carson about ogres or about, we're all talking about our different lists and stuff like that for what's coming out. And I've noticed that like our Discord, like people are really good about posting like, a lot of the stuff before I see it anywhere else. So, yeah. Excellent. You are back. Mistakes were made.
Okie dokie. Okie dokie. Moving on. Stonehorn Beast Riders. This is very similar to what we see on the Frostlord War Scroll. We're basically like, it's 14 wounds on a 4-up save instead of a 15 wounds on a 3-up save. Definitely not as tough. Still has a 5-up ward. They still have all of the rock hard horns and crushing hooves attacks, so like the majority of their damage is still there. They're battle lined if the general is Beastclaw Raiders, and then the exact same attack profile as a Huskard on Stonehorn, but with 3 more punch attacks. So basically, they'll get their Harpoon Launcher, their Chain Trap, or their Blood Vulture, and then also they what's it called? Get 6 attacks that are 1 damage each. So not really great.
No.
So yeah, these guys are pretty good. You know, they'll have access to that Stonehorn jumping thing, so not bad.
It's strange that the rock hard horns have a different amount of attacks and stuff on the battle line one, hey? Or is that is that the same?
It's the same.
Oh, is it? Okay, my apologies. So
Yep.
there's 6 attacks when you
Yep.
start off. Whoa.
Yep. Yeah, so you could be doing 24 damage with them. The big thing is hitting on 4s though, which is not great.
No, it's true, but I mean, you know, there's what do you call it? Hoarfrost and all sorts of stuff out there.
Yep.
Wow. Cool.
Yep. 330 points for 1. Pretty pricey, but yeah. Thunder Tusk Beast Riders, exact same situation as before. It's the same Thunder Tusk. It has the same Frost Wreath Ice shooting attack. It's got the same, basically like missile weapons as the Huskard. It's the same, just not with a priest on top. And they're 260 points, so it's relatively cheap.
And like,
and they're battle line and Beastclaw Raiders as well.
Even just for the 3-up fight last, you could make the argument.
Yep. Yeah, certainly not bad. Actually, it is bad, I think, but still.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Keep trying to make it
Scrap
work.
Launcher.
I've never even seen it before. I don't even know what the model looks like. Should I try and pull it up?
I'll pull it up.
Okay.
Like this Nobbler Scrap
Or
Launcher.
no, actually, is that the model that you actually have there on the screen?
This one here?
Yeah. Actually, that's actually a really cool model.
It's pretty neat.
Is it the same kit as the cannon?
Yeah, you're choosing between an Iron Blaster and this.
Oh.
So you're choosing an Iron Blaster. It is basically.
Oh man, that's too bad. I really like that model, to be honest. I think it's dope. I like the other one too, but oh man, that's a shame. So
yeah. Yep. Iron Blaster. It's
moving right along.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Even though it got a 30-point nerf, it's still excellent.
Right.
That was a long time ago. It shouldn't even be in my memory anymore. But
Yeah.
every time you shoot, you basically either choose between the cannonball or the hail shot. You usually want to be using the hail shot if you can, just because it's 20 damage potential instead of 12. But the cannonball is still terrifying, right?
Yep.
It's still so basically the 2 profiles are the cannonball, which is 30-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, which kind of sucks, but you can all attack the 3s, and then 2s to wound, and then Ren 2, and then D3 plus 3 damage. And the important thing to note is that it says 7 inches, but you're almost always hungry, so you're moving 9 inches, 30-inch range, 39-inch threat range on that profile. Super good, and you can maneuver it super well too. It's really agile. Yeah, it's fantastic. Ludwig says it wouldn't be Saga of Dice with a little bit of Trash Panda. That's very true. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't screw up the opening like usual, so we had to make up for it somehow. Yeah, Underguts, like mentioned before, additional rend here, the +1 to hit. Is it command trait?
Artifact or
Artifact.
Gruesome Trophy Wreck.
Yeah,
that's against monsters and heroes specifically, but
yeah, I mean,
yeah, still really good.
Everyone has heroes.
Yeah, I mean, you might not be able to hit them with shooting is the problem.
It's true.
Lookout Sir is the thing.
Yeah.
And then the other profile is the hail shot, 12-inch range, 10 attacks, 3s, -1, 2 damage. This is really good because like all an attack makes it 2s and 3s, which is excellent. Like you're gonna wipe a screen almost entirely with this, and then it's also just gonna really hurt something. It's also really good for Unleash Hell. Like damage potential 20 is fantastic, and it's not being really affected by like one issue with Unleash Hell sometimes is if you have a big block of like shooting units, it's only the models that are within 6 that actually are able to shoot whatever it is that charged them. This is just one model, and it has that many shots, so it's fantastic. It's actually not terrible in combat. Like 3 attacks, 2 damage each, 2 attacks, D3 damage each. It's killed stuff before. Like it's not nothing.
Me every time, I swear. Every time I'm like, I can't believe how killy this thing is in melee for its points plus its, you know what I mean? Like what it is. And also it's not that easy to kill either. 9 wounds on a 4-up. Like it's no joke. Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as we mentioned several times, Blubbergrub Stench makes this a really good tech piece. Because all of a sudden, if you get that spell off, this Iron Blaster counts as 10 on the objective. It gets a monstrous action, and it gets charge modals on. It can either be 4s if you're not in Meat Fist, or it could be 3s if you are in Meat Fist. But 4s is still really good. Like if you're in Underguts and you're bringing like 3 or 4 Iron Blasters, all of a sudden that's 3 or 4 units that can move 9 inches and then have the like mortals on 4s on the charge, which is super good.
And if the damage goes up when it charges, like charging it is like a pretty consistently good thing to do. It seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on what you're charging it into, but
for sure.
Definitely. But yeah, that's him. Quite good. The Great Maw Pot. Basically, we have 2 pieces of terrain in ogres.
The first one.
This is the first one. So basically, you set it up wholly in your territory more than 3 inches from other terrain or objectives. It's impassable. You add 1 to casting and a binding rolls for ogre wizards that are within an inch of it. And it's just ogre wizards. It's not, just butchers. So if you have something with arcane tone, that's pretty nice. Within an inch is not great, but we'll take it. Battle Broth, basically what happens is the pot starts full. You can empty it, and then it'll heal all ogres wholly within 36 inches for D3 wounds. And then if an enemy model dies within 6 inches of the pot, it refills, and you can use that ability again.
So it could even be like a screen or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the clan rats get a little too close, and then it gets refilled.
Yep.
Huh.
The only thing that sucks is that this is opt-in for your opponent, essentially.
Yep.
And 6 inches isn't a huge range for them to really want to ignore.
It's true.
So as a result of that, I tend to like to deploy this back of board.
Yeah.
And then basically make it so that like I'm sandwiching my wizards right at the back of the board, so they get +1 to cast. So in the current GHP, there's a battle tactic called Magical Dominance. It just makes it easier to score because +1 on 2d6 is actually quite good. It just makes it much more reliable to be able to get your spells off. So pretty nice.
Yep. Nope. Really good.
Yep.
I mean, it should be pointed out. It's not really good, actually. It's not.
No.
It's not. It's one of the lower. It's on the lower end of actual terrain pieces.
Yeah.
There, but.
Yep. And then next up, our second piece of terrain.
Yeah, the Sarlacc Pit.
The Maw Pit, which is super cool. It looks cool anyway.
It looks amazing. It's probably the coolest looking terrain piece, and I say that as someone who doesn't play ogres, right?
Yeah. You set it up. So there's a key difference here. You set it up wholly outside of enemy territory, 3 inches away from other terrain and objectives. So the difference between this and the Maw Pot is that if you have a big map that has no man's land, you can put the Maw Pit like right up next to enemy territory.
So cool.
The only issue is that this thing is huge. It is a massive piece of terrain, and I've got 2 pages here to kind of talk about this, but it's hard to make fit, and I'll go into that later. But it is garrisonable, but it's only garrisonable by butchers. It has an ability called the Throat of Gur. I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. It's very wordy, but basically each player at the end of their charge phase rolls a dice for each of their units that satisfy all of the following. It's within 12 inches of an enemy unit. It's within 12 inches of a terrain feature, or 18 if it's garrisoned. Or this terrain feature, rather, or 18 if it's garrisoned. And it's not in combat. So it basically means like if you decided not to charge with something and kept it close to the Maw Pit.
Not that close. 12 inches. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
24-inch bubble, and it's got a big base.
18 inches if it's garrisoned, though. So
wow.
Like it's not terrible.
You're covering most of the board at that point. Like.
Yes. But then what happens is that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds on a 3+, and it's not applicable to Gutbusters.
No.
This seems better than it is, I think, because, again, this model is huge. It's really difficult to place in a spot that's actually useful in, like, typical tournament terrain placements. Usually there's, like, 4 spots on the board where it can actually be placed, and none of them are great. It's kind of out of the way. So, not great because of that. Then you have an ability called Head Butcher, which means if it is garrisoned by a butcher, in your hero phase you can pick 1 enemy unit within 18 inches and roll a d6. If the result is more than double the wounds characteristic, one model is slain. If it's more than triple, three models are slain. So the important thing to note is that there's the more word there. So if you're targeting a unit that has like one wound characteristic, you have to roll a 3-up to slay one model and a 4-up to slay three models. On a unit that has a wounds characteristic of 2, you can't kill three models.
Right.
Because you can't get above 6, unfortunately. So it's not.
Again, it's really oddly wordy. It's unnecessarily.
It's very wordy and it's not great, unfortunately.
And just to go back to the D3 mortals on 3-up, not applicable to Gutbusters. I guess it seems like from your experience, unless you're basically just leaning into Gutbusters, it's not the best turning piece.
Yeah, another issue is that it just feels like it doesn't do anything.
Right.
I don't know. It's not. I'm not. I don't feel strongly about it. Continuing, it does have another rule where if an enemy monster attempts to stomp it and fails, i.e. they roll less than 3, it takes 3d6 mortal wounds back, which is pretty crazy. That's pretty nice because like what's it called? It's like stomp bait. I guess it's like, do you really want to try and stomp this thing? Like there's a 1/3 chance that I'm just going to spike your monster, and a lot of people don't really want to take that gamble.
It's so
the
cool.
Unfortunate thing is, what I've experienced is that this model is just too useless for that calculation to even enter someone's mind. They're like, oh, okay, whatever, that's there.
I mean, I get some elite armies that are trying to do board control, like and they're out there, like Stormcast or whatever. There's a lot of Stormcast lists that are trying to do board control and whatnot. That 3-up, like that could be devastating to be constantly suffering 3-up when you're within like 36 inches of the damn thing.
Yeah,
but
the issue is that you have to be close to both me and it. So
right, yeah, that's right. You have to be within 12 inches of an. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Dang.
So and because of how aggressive ogres are, I'm typically pushing you back, so you're not going to be as close to it, right?
Man, what a shame! It's so cool looking.
Yeah, but it does have some uses, and I'll go over those for the next couple slides. So the first one is that Underguts is a great use because Underguts is basically they want to castle their Ironblasters. They want to have like a big ranged castle that's moving up. So having a static piece of terrain that punishes you from getting close to it, actually pretty good. I think you should run the Mob Pit and Underguts. It's a good choice. Also, Underguts are going to be mostly Gutbusters, so it's not going to be accidentally hurting you. Another use, you could use it as an always cocked dice tray. Yeah, you could put your dice in there, and the little teeth will make it always cocked, and you have to go, oh, I got to re-roll again. Oh, it's whoops. You could use it to rekindle your broken relationship with your son. It's kind of Frisbee-like, you know? It might get some airtime. I think that'd be good. Yeah.
Or if you're an abusive father, you could use it to beat your child. I mean, I meant repair your broken relationship.
Yeah, that's right.
With your son.
Yeah. And much more.
Wow.
Segue. Common playstyles and list. So now we're kind of entering the main course, the entree, even though it's been 2.5 hours to get to this point. We're a very slow serving restaurant. I'm sorry. Bear with me. Also, hello, Hey Whoa.
Thanks for joining us, brother.
Thanks for joining. Big fan. You know.
As are we both. I've been spoofing you for a long time now.
Yeah. This background is because of you, the meat dimension. That's your creation, so glad to have you. But yeah, common playstyles and lists. There's 4 common archetypes that you really see in competitive ogres. The big one is, so from left to right, we've got Boulderhead Monster Crux. You've got your Underguts Iron Blaster Spam. You've got your Meat Fist Kragnos Gang and your Meat Fist Combined Arms. And those are they're all pretty different, but yeah, it's pretty nice. So I'm just going to take a quick hydration break.
Yeah.
The service is slow, but the animatronics band is great. Yeah. Monster trucks. So you kind of want to play this archetype if you... Actually, before I continue, let's take a little bit of a break. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask now that we've kind of done like war scrolls, gone over all of the battle tactics and all the allegiance abilities, stuff like that? Because this is where I really start to kind of parse all of that information into like what exists in the meta, why you would play these certain things and like kind of how they do generally. So, any questions at all?
Including like what was Carson's gift from the meat dimension today? If you got here late, like Haywo said, he got a battletome, I got a beer. Yeah, it was good. Oh, and you got spam too. That's right. If you need a good recipe for spam, I'm also your man.
Yep, some spam shamey.
Yep. Use it for spackle, like Weird Al Yankovic says. We can always come back to them if you guys think of questions or whatever.
Yep.
Please feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We will respond as we go along. Anyway, monster trucks, Boulderhead, as I said before. Basically, this archetype is for people who want to have an army full of slappy, tanky, fast monsters. Absolutely. You love to alpha strike your opponent. You love the Stonehorn model. It's a great model. And you don't want to pay more than 6 models, basically. You want to have super low model count. You want to have monster trucks. Just my dog doesn't like that, but I'm doing it anyway.
We can barely hear her, but I like the this. This is definitely seems like my kind of thing. You know.
Yeah. There's lots of fun. Always be charging.
Really cool logo too on it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Your key units are going to be your Frostlord on Stonehorn, your Stonehorn Beast Riders. You've got your Huskguard on Stonehorn. Are you noticing a theme? Mournfang pack, basically for battle line filling. You can't only have Stonehorns, unfortunately. They increase the points because they hate us. And then your applicable book tactics. It's interesting because GW wants you to play Beastclaw Raiders, it feels like, because most of your book tactics actually revolve around playing them. You can actually access 4 of them, like, not terribly difficultly. That was not a word, but still, it's not too bad. Like, Avalanche of Flesh, definitely doable. You've got a bunch of monsters, and they're doing mortals on 4s, like, easy calculation. Eat your fill. You're the fastest version of ogres, so you can get into combat easier. Savor the taste. You can retreat away and be far enough away that your opponent can't punish you for not being in combat. Super easy. Savor the taste is just really easy in general. And then let them loose. 4 monstrous actions. Sure. If you have 4 Stonehorns, why not? Right? And then, yeah, as 10 bucks says, sneaky hero sniping with the vultures is definitely a thing too. Yeah, lots of fun. Here's an example list. This isn't necessarily like the best list or like a super meta list, but this is kind of what you would see. So like 2 Frostlords on Stonehorn, 1 with Rockmane Elder, 1 with Metal Cruncher. One of the Frostlords is a priest that has the heal prayer, just because every wound that you have on these Stonehorns is like incredibly valuable. They're on a 3-up save, 5-up ward, so the more you can heal them and kind of get that recursion engine going, the better. You have your Huskguard on Stonehorn, which has got a Blood Vulture. I made him a Stonehorn, and I gave him the bad mount trait just because bad mount trait is better than no mount trait at all, I guess. Why not? You could make an argument for taking the Thunder Tusk too. That's totally fine.
Can you give mount traits to non-hero units? No. Okay.
Yep.
That makes more sense.
And then we've got basically 2 units of Mournfang packs, and then 1 unit of Stonehorn Beast Riders, and that sits you right at 1990. And basically, you can be 3 drops of the Battle Regiment. You take the Mob Pot because unfortunately the Mob Pit only excludes Gutbusters from being damaged. So you're just hurting yourself if you have a Mob Pit, unfortunately, with this army. So this is basically like a monster trucks list. You have 4 big Stonehorns, some Mournfang, and you're just going at your opponent. Someone said in the chat, Ludivicus said it's the easiest / hardest faction to play. I agree with that completely because like one thing that you want to do is just absolutely send it into your opponent. But I think that if you play pretty reserved with this army, it can actually be pretty terrifying because there's nothing more scary than 4 monsters just like looming over you for the entire game, like waiting for the perfect time to come in and absolutely murder something.
It's like an exercise in patience and restraint. Yeah. I actually just looked at the wrong thing. I was like, I thought it said mount trait. Like I heard mount trait, and then I was looking over here and I saw Blood Vulture, and then I saw Blood Vulture over here, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, are you putting a mount trait on that? I didn't realize that's the thing that it's like his shooting attack or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
back with you now.
Another thing I put in this list is I put the polished nullstone pebble on the general Stonehorn, just because I thought it'd be really funny if you just like whip that Stonehorn into your opponent.
Okay.
And they have a blizzard in their castle or something, but then on a 4-up, you're causing the blizzard to bounce off into your enemy unit. So
Oh, yeah,
that's pretty fun.
It is very fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could argue making that, maybe you want to have Arcane Tome or something as well. Yeah.
Right.
It will says key point to the vulture is it's an ability, not a shooting attack, so you can get around some of the anti-shooting rules. Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
It's just 2+ take a mortal wound. There is no shooting sequence.
And you can do it after you're running and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a great point.
There's some meme lists that have like 7 Thunder Tusks that all have blood vultures. So you're just like deleting a support hero every turn, which is pretty fun.
Wow. Do you need to see them?
Nope.
What?
Okay.
So like it would get around Deepkin stuff too, like I guess.
Yeah, it's not a shooting. It definitely get around Deepkin stuff.
Wow.
Blood vulture
cannot be, or it doesn't count as a shooting attack at all.
It just says pick one enemy unit on the battle. Oh, it is visible to this unit.
Okay.
Yeah, it does have to be visible.
So I think it would not get around Deepkin then because they're not visible or something like that.
I thought it was just that you have to pick the closest unit. Or are you talking about the tides thing where you can't shoot outside of 12 inches or whatever?
No. Yeah, that's the shard ritual. That's a thing for another day, but
okay.
I was just, things for calculating and whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, lots of fun here. This is definitely like the Timmy fun, still actually quite competitive. And here are kind of some pros and cons of running monster trucks. So pros, it's simple to pilot. I would say it's difficult to master because you have like 8 models on the field. That's always going to be hard. Capable of alpha strikes. That's really nice. It's tough as nails. Like most of your stuff is going to be on a 3-up save or it's going to be having a 5-up ward. Super great. Slaps really hard, both in the charge phase and in the combat phase. Really maneuverable. Like your minimum move is going to be 11 inches in this list, which is huge. And then it scores battle tactics very well. So you don't even really need a lot of the GHB battle tactics that exist right now, but using the ones from there and the ones from this book, I don't think you're going to have a problem scoring 5 battle tactics. Some cons, it's a one-trick Stonehorn, unfortunately. Most high-level players will kind of learn to deal with it relatively easily. So like if a high-level player has experienced ogres before, chances are they know monster trucks and they know all of the tricks that they're going to have to deal with, like the Stonehorn flying around and like screening properly for charge mortals. And it can be shut down pretty hard, unfortunately. And it's hard countered by certain armies, unfortunately. So like hordes, tar pits, monster killers. It's more of a skew list, and therefore it counters certain things and gets countered by other things.
Like all skew lists naturally do.
Exactly. Yeah. So as a result, it's certainly not bad. It's kind of a mid-tables bully. Tends to 3-2 to 4-1 typically. It's really rare to see a 5-0 monster trucks list unless it's in like an RTT or something. Or I guess that would be 3-0. But yeah,
right.
It's pretty unlikely. And that's kind of them as a whole, as an archetype. Moving on to the next one, we've got the Underguts Ironblasters spam. You would play this archetype if you like Tau, if you like the idea of overwhelming firepower, if you love the idea of your opponent never feeling safe, even outside the matches, and if you're an actual mole person.
Interesting. What if I'm 3 out of the 4 of those things? Like I hate Tau, but everything else is kind of on the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be for you. You never know.
I think I'm still more of a monster truck guy, but I'll keep listening. We'll see where we go. Okay.
Yeah. Your key units, you're going to have your Ironblaster. You're going to have your Lead Belchers. You probably want a Butcher or a Slaughtermaster to get access to Blubbergrip Stench. You've got your Noblars, which are going to be like key screens that you want to put in front of all of those valuable Ironblasters. And then your applicable book tactics. This is the unfortunate part, is you kind of you have access to Avalanche of Flesh technically, and then you definitely have access to Savor the Taste, no ogres in combat.
Right.
But the other ones are very reliant on being in combat, making what's it called? Like doing monstrous actions. Like technically you could do Let Them Loose. Technically you could do all ogres in combat, but it's really not as good. So these are kind of the 2 main ones that you're thinking of. And then here's an example list. I've created 2 actually because, as I've said before, you should always be taking a Stonehorn to the match if you're playing ogres. But if not, here's here's the list that you wouldn't take it in. So basically, you've got a butcher with reluctant rabble rouser, and what that does is it makes all of these 60 noblars basically battle shock immune.
Jeez.
Wholly within 18 inches. You give him gruesome trophy rack, which just gives everything within 12 inches of him +1 to hit against monsters and heroes. You give him blubber grip stench because that's the Iron Blaster one that makes them monsters. And then you have a fire belly to basically give yourself -1 to hit as some defensive capability. And that can count towards your noblars as well if you keep them far enough up. After that, you're basically paying a bit of a battle line tax, 2 lead belchers, but you are keeping 1 group of iron guts just as like a, last resort counter slap. You've chewed through 60 noblars, so now it's time for you to fight Iron Gut's final boss, basically. Just because it's nice to have some melee output in the list.
Nice. No, I like it a lot.
Yeah. And you got 4 Iron Blasters, which, as we mentioned before, are going to be Ren 3 at 30 inches, or Ren 2 at 12 inches, absolutely shredding anything they want. Really, really difficult to deal with.
And they move so far that they're like one of the better, reach out and touch someone kind of units in the game.
Yep. And then the nice thing is that Blubber Grip Stench is an 18-inch aura from the Butcher as well. So you don't have to keep things very compact at all to make this work.
No kidding. Wow. You just put him kind of central and then...
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Then I think this is the list that you probably want to try out the Maw Pit in. The only thing is that the Fire Belly is not Gutbusters. So there's a chance that your Fire Belly could be hurt.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that it's actually not bad because it's only in every one of your charge phases.
Right.
And it's only D3 wounds on a 3-up. So it's like your Fire Belly is 7 wounds. On average, it takes 4 turns worth of taking this damage to actually kill him.
Well, also, he has to be within range of an enemy unit. So you can kind of manage that to a certain extent. Or you've got 20 points to spare here. You could take another Butcher if you're that worked up about it. And then if they kill the Butcher inside the terrain, then the other guy can hop in there and Bob's your uncle. Benny's your aunt.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
So, and the nice thing about the Maw Pit is that these buffs that you have, and certainly you could swap out for a Slaughtermaster as well, but the Gruesome Trophy Rack, Blubber Grip Stench, and Reluctant Rabble Rouser are now all being projected from your Maw Pit instead of just the base size of the Butcher.
Huge base.
And as I mentioned before, the Maw Pit is just gigantic, right?
No kidding.
I think it's like 8 or 9 inches long or something like that, as opposed to this tiny 50mm base that the Butcher has. So now you have a huge footprint of bubbles being casted out that is just buffing your entire army. So this is pretty fun. It's a nice castle list.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then I would probably take Endorian Acolytes in the current GHB, just because it's nice to get your spells off better. The unfortunate thing about having so much artillery is that you don't really have a good opportunity to fill out battalions very well.
Right.
And I personally value Endorian Acolytes over a free all-out attack once per game, for instance.
Well, and it should be pointed out too that I don't know, some people might look at this and be like 60 Noblars, of those god-awful models, but there's a lot of proxies out there. I know you use the Hobgrot Slittas from Cruel Boys, and there's still a lot of Dominion boxes floating out there, by the way, so you might be able to get them really cheap. Use them like Carson does, and yeah, because you didn't have any pushback from any of the major tournaments, including the GW hosted ones. So
yeah, I brought the Hobgrot Slitters to Sparkle Party, Kippers, and World Championships of Warhammer. Nobody batted an eye.
Nope.
I even played against a Cruel Boys player, and he was like, "Neat."
yeah. I like those models too.
Yeah.
We're both destruction. Cool. Yeah.
It was not a problem. And then I actually came up with a second list for this archetype. Basically, what you're doing is you're going down to 3 Iron Blasters instead of 4. You're going down to 1 Noblars instead of 3. So it's 20 instead of 60 Noblars. But because you should be taking your Frostlord with you every time, now you're taking your Frostlord who has Arcane Tome, Rockmane Elder. He is your mobile tar pit who you just whip into your enemy, and then your Iron Blasters are just shooting everything around him. It's just basically kind of similar to how I play my Combined Arms list, but with 3 Iron Blasters at Ren 3 instead of mostly relying on Iron Guts and Gluttons.
That looks like a lot of fun too. If I were to play ogres, I think I would get like I would need to get the ability to get this list and then also the monster trucks. But I would probably start here just because it seems a little easier to paint.
Here?
Yeah, this one, because it's like
That's true.
It's 20 Noblars and it's like 18 ogres, foot ogres, right?
12.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wait.
Four each.
Oh, because lead belchers are 4. Right.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, that's not bad. That's in comparison, that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Mob Pit in this list as well because the Frost Lord's not going to be anywhere near it probably.
Right.
And yeah, I would. So this is actually a list that. So someone on the AOS coach Discord kind of reached out to me. He was getting into ogres. He really liked the idea of underguts, but he also really likes the Stonehorn. So we kind of built this list together. So I don't want to say his name, and just in case he doesn't want to be doxed or anything, but thank you. Shout outs
to that person, and if you're watching this, if you're okay with it, put your name in the comments. Yeah. And exactly. by the way, Reformed Bugman did say no to inner city hobgrots on hobgrot violence. It's very true. It's something I've long stood for, actually. So, yeah.
Anyway, so this is like a 10 drop, so it's like slightly less drops than the previous one.
But when you're at 10, you don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You make it a Warlord Battalion, you can take an extra artifact for Arcane Tome. Alternatively, you could take a Spell Lore Enhancement, get Blizzard, and Tongues of Flame for the Firebelly and the Butcher, respectively. So that's pretty nice. Tongues of Flame is something I wanted to experiment with, so could be nice. Yeah. The pros and cons of Underguts Ironblaster spam. It will absolutely dunk on anything, it will absolutely dunk on certain armies and units. So this is like skewless to the extreme, right? If you have something that's running like mostly monsters on like 4-up saves or something. So let's say like your opponent plops down a whole bunch of Bloodthirsters in front of you and you're just like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, all of those 4-up save.
Bye.
Yeah. Monsters that now I'm doing like Rend 3 into them. I'm getting +1 to hit with my entire, shooting arm. Like it's horrible for them. They really don't like it. It can still slap hard in melee. There's ways to do that, especially if you have a Stonehorn involved. And it's fun to play, I think, for someone that's looking for a minor challenge. This one is like a little bit higher of a skill floor than the monster trucks.
Right.
Certainly not like impossible and certainly not crazy. But I think this is like there's a little bit of mental math going on like how you're going to screen properly, how you're going to like score battle tactics better. That's going to be a big one.
When you're new to the game, screening is definitely a thing that people mostly need to learn.
Yeah. So this is going to be pretty fun. Some cons: it's going to be hard countered by certain opponents. Unfortunately, if they don't have any monsters or any big heroes, then you're just losing out on an artifact, which is unfortunate. And you're hitting on 4s from 30 inches, which kind of sucks.
Right.
If you go into Cruel Boys, Grin and Blades, then RIP.
Yeah.
And then if your opponent is relying on just like tons of hordes, so like the zombie spam list or something, probably not going to be a good time for you either. You can't muscle them off objectives, then it's going to be rough. And then Idoneth can just decide to turn off your army for turn 1, which is unfortunate too.
Yeah, and they get to choose that at the start of the game. So
yeah, exactly.
Also, it should be pointed out, like some other shooting armies, because ogres don't have a great save. Like KO and cities and stuff like that just kind of do shooting quite well, are going to kind of mess up this army in a major way.
Yeah, it's just going to be whoever gets to shoot first, basically, which will be rough.
Right.
It doesn't score battle tactics super well. It's not impossible. It's not like Skaven level bad, but
hey, we got a new one.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. But it's still not great. And as you kind of alluded to before, ogres are not particularly tough. So you don't have like a super strong castle that can't be busted, for instance. So
that's very, very bustable castle.
It's very bustable. Yeah, and each Ironblaster you lose it's gonna hurt a lot. Right. Yeah. Moving on, we've got Meatfist Kragnos. Play this archetype if you prefer alpha strikes as well. It's a lot of fun. I think the charge phase is the only real phase. The only phase that matters. And then enjoy the thought of a literal tidal wave of meat. I wrote this whole paragraph thing here, but I'm starting to get tired and I don't want to read the whole thing. But basically, Kragnos is misunderstood and you should really call him back and he misses you. So
Okay.
let's go to the next thing.
You can always download
units.
the slides if you
Yeah,
want to read
yeah, exactly.
random. I love
Sorry,
it.
the sneeze is coming on.
He's gonna think about it. He's thinking, contemplating. Nope.
It's not coming.
Oh man, you did that thing like you did that thing like on The Office where Jim can't talk and he's like, you know what I mean? He's been jinxed or whatever. And, oh man, I thought that was gonna happen. Amazing. Yeah.
Yep. He says someone got a little upset the other week playing against my 1,000-point cities because of my shooting. The only shooting I had was one cannon in the Van Dents. All I could think was, "Oh, you poor child." Oh,
yeah. Yeah. You don't know how lucky you
my.
are, man.
Yeah.
Come see some of the people in our group. And yeah. Moving right along.
Storm's brewing. So the key units
Yeah.
that are in the Meatfist Kragnos are going to be your Kragnos, obviously. It's kind of important for his whole theme. Spamming tyrants is a big one. So just like absolutely just like meat missile, just ICBM tyrants, because they're going to be doing mortals on 3s on the charge, which is really big when they have the Brawler Guts, big name. Iron Guts are really big because, you know, while it's nice to do mortal wounds on the charge, it's also nice to shred something when you get there. Lead Belchers, just to get like easy access to 4s on the charge for cheaper points. And then Nobblers are going to be a nice thing just to like have a one screen at least.
Right.
Your applicable book tactics are definitely going to be Avalanche of Flesh. Like that's kind of the whole army. Savor the Taste is going to be big too. Every ogre army can score that one, and then Eat Your Fill is good too because you generally want to get into combat. So a little bit better than Underguts for sure. A Meatfist Kragnos example list is going to be Kragnos himself.
What? Oh yeah, that makes some sense. Yeah.
What? Yeah. You're going to have 4 tyrants. All of them are going to have Brawler Guts. And then one of them is the general who has the killer reputation thing, which will have like either Death Cheater or Fate Seeker as his second thing. So he's either going to be on a 5-up board or a 3-up save, just to be a little bit tougher because he's the general. You want to keep him alive. And then one tyrant, you're going to give an artifact of Arcane Tome. Another tyrant, you can give Gruesome Trophy Rack because the +1 to hit is also in melee against monsters and heroes. So might as well buff yourself. Why not? And then another tyrant, which doesn't have any artifacts or anything. It's just Brawler Guts again. So basically like 4 tyrants who are all doing mortals on 3s to charge.
And everyone can have the same big name? Sorry, I didn't time that well, but...
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, you can spam that as much as you want.
Because it's not like it's not a mount trait or whatever. It's like exists outside of it. Is that the reason? Oh, neat.
Yep.
Cool.
And then you've got basically as little battle line as you can. So 2 groups of Lead Belchers, 1 group of Iron Guts, and then 1 group of Nobblers to screen. This is really just like, it's all about the charge phase. Like you're setting up the right charge phase. You're using those Nobblers to probably delay your opponent for 1 turn because they can screen for a turn pretty well. You set up a little bit better, get your charges in, absolutely spam a ton of mortal wounds. This is 2,000 points. It's 4 drops because it's a battle regiment and a command entourage to get the artifact enhancement. Credit to Randall Brasher, who was the other ogre player you were talking about earlier, number 2 on ITC. You know, he does really well with this style of list, and you know, there's a reason why. It's really good.
That's so interesting. I actually didn't realize that the other, like the guy who was like competing with you for the top ogre player was also playing Meatfist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neat.
Yep. Yeah, this list is pretty cool. There's some pros, which are pros and cons. Insane mortal wound output. Each tyrant is averaging 7 mortal wounds on the charge. If your entire list charges with this list here, it deals 40 mortal wounds on average.
Not including Kragnos?
Not including Kragnos, yeah. So it's pretty nutty.
Mother of God.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's pretty scary. Granted, actually, I'll continue on. Okay. So 40 mortal wounds on average. So it's got decent ability to score battle tactics. You know, it's gonna get where it wants to go really easily. Still pretty slappy when you get stuck in. Like tyrants they're fine. Like each one of them is basically an Iron Gut, or an Iron Gut plus, I guess, because he's got a little bit better attacks. And he's about as tough as 2 Iron Guts, 8 wounds on a 4-up. And they're the Kings of YOLO. You know, they're the absolute slot machine army. You know, maybe you roll 18 inches to charge, and maybe you roll 18 mortal wounds. You know, it can happen, right?
It can happen.
You can spike super hard and absolutely decimate your opponent with this army. So
And you're probably on average getting some mortal wounds, out of phase, as we keep pointing out,
yeah,
and yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty big.
On
The cons
average.
are that if you have any army that is like a tar pit, a horde, it's
Right.
going to be the bane of your existence,
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
So like plague bearer spam, if you have a ton of clan rats in the way, if you have like zombies and stuff like that, it's just going to be awful for you to deal with.
Or like chaos warriors or stuff with
Yep.
like a 5 up and they're a tar pit. Like, ugh.
Yeah,
Fair
it's
enough.
that's going to be really rough to go into. And then once you're stuck in, the tyrants aren't great at being hammers or anvils. So like if they
Right.
haven't already killed what they're intending to kill, they're gonna die, right?
Right.
Like any respectable hammer is just gonna absolutely melt them, unfortunately. And each tyrant that you lose is like a big source of damage, which kind of sucks. And it doesn't deal with recursive or attrition-based opponents very well at all. So again, if your opponent keeps you in combat and then just keeps spawning models around you, like your entire source of damage is getting the charge. And if your opponent can deny you the charge in any way, RIP, like that's the main source of your damage. So it's just
Like
it's not.
like 3 skink units redeploying and moving
Yeah.
away. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Or you get Glotkind or something like that. Granted, it's easier to
wow.
avoid the Glotkin in this list because you can sit outside at 12 and still like have a decent chance at making the charge.
With
But still,
Kragnos, totally.
yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, lots of fun. Lastly, Meat Fist Combined Arms. You want to play this archetype if you like playing toolbox armies. You enjoy painting variety. You prefer to not direct the counter or be countered. And if you have a mustache and you're named Carson.
That's true.
Yeah. So
Again, I'm 3 out of 4 on those. It's kind of
Yeah.
That's interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Combined Arms is basically like there's a lot of key units because it's just really spread across the board. So you got your Frostlord and Stonehorn. Always want to bring it to every list. You got a Slaughtermaster or a Butcher. You've got a Firebelly. You've got Gluttons and Iron Guts. You've got an Ironblaster. You've got Nobblers. Basically, the whole thing is basically. Sorry, I'm saying a bunch of words, getting tongue twisted again. You're basically trying to like project threat in as many ways as possible, so that like if there's one way that you're being countered, all of the other ways can kind of make up for it.
Right.
And ogres are actually surprisingly good at doing that. And then the applicable book tactics are basically the same as the other Meat Fist list. Avalanche of Flesh, Savor the Taste, Eat Your Fill.
Man, 3 out
Not bad.
of 6 is amazing. That's so strong.
These aren't guaranteed.
No, obviously not. But they're pretty darn good. Like I would say, far better than average. At least if my books are anything to go by. Keith says his name isn't Carson. He guess he's out. But no, like that's 75%. I'm there with you, Keith. He's talking me into it. You know? Yeah.
You could always change your name. You know?
Yep. Yeah. You exactly. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Going on, this is just my list. This is the list that I brought to World Championships. I came 7th.
Yep.
I was only North American in the top bracket. It served me super well. I had a great time with it. But basically, it's your Slaughtermaster, which is Gastromancer to get all of the Ogre spells plus Hoardfrost. The Firebelly's got Billowing Ash to have your -1 to hit castle. And then your Frostlord is going to be -1 to wound. He's got Arcane Tome to give himself Mystic Shield. 2 units of Gluttons, 2 units of Iron Guts, 1 Iron Blaster, 1 unit of Nobblers, and a Great Maw Pot. It's just all around, does a lot of stuff. I love it. There's a reason why I still play it. So probably going to bring something very similar to it to LVO as well.
Yeah. Now, it should be pointed out, too, just at this juncture, you have played it several times on the channel against other like tournament-winning people, so you could really see him like play this list. You can also see you did a full breakdown after World Championship of Warhammer, and so we really deep dive on the list, so that there's more content if you need more meat in your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then alternate kind of builds for this. It's a 1-drop is how I run it, just because I like to be able to decide turn priority. However, you can do 3 drops by just making the Firebelly and the Slaughtermaster and Endorian Acolytes and then having everything else be a 1-drop.
Right.
Then you get like a little bit more reliable casting, which is nice. Alternatively, something I've been experimenting with too is taking one of these Glutton units, swapping them for a Gorger mod pack. It's had mixed results. I think I like it. I'm going to keep trying it. I'm undecided about what I'm going to bring to LVO though. It's the nice thing about it is that I get a Triumph bid, which is super.
Right.
It's pretty great.
Yep.
And then the tech that I talked about earlier.
You won't remember the Triumph, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, what says this looks good? The kind of thing I'd play if I didn't love monster trucks so much. I'm right there with you, brother. I would be monster trucks for me.
Yeah. Honestly, like I said this at the beginning of the stream. The main reason why I started playing this style of list isn't because I had some like big brain realization that like, oh, this is how ogres are meant to be played competitively. It was just like, oh, I want to paint one Ironblaster and one group of Nodlars and one Firebelly and one Stonehorn and one like I just got bored painting, and then I was like, hey, this all kind of works actually, and then I kind of expanded on it from there, and it's been great, having a lot of fun.
And I just wanted to point out, like, I know you won't say it, but he's actually won best painted before. Like, they're beautifully painted. There's tattoos on everything. Oh, stop. You stop. Anyway. Yeah, it really is. I'm quite, I wish I had like one army. Like, I do have one army. It's Skaven, but I mean, like, that I was just satisfied with, with one army. Oh, man. Yeah, yep. That's a good point too. There's a decent amount of you converted your slaughter. Is it Slaughtermaster, the one with the skull, the giant skull?
Yeah, the Slaughtermaster has a giant skull that was actually sculpted for me by. So I worked on the Age of Sigmar video game Stormground, and one of the artists for that game basically built me that as like a. It's like a one-time thing. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It's like totally unique.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And then I guess the other conversions would be like the Hopgrot Splitters. But yeah.
You can probably buy those for really cheap.
Yeah, definitely.
With all those Dominion boxes floating around. Someone was like posting like what was a box? A whole Dominion box was like, was it 69 or 70
bucks?
Yeah, 60 bucks. Canadian, which is like $4 American or something. It's wild. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Also, bear with me. We're almost at the end. I'm sorry. But we've got, the pros and cons of the combined arms. Pros, it generally does, pretty well into everything. And it generally has a tool that is very useful against any given opponent, just because it has so many different tools. It projects threat in basically every phase. It's capable of making good trades if piloted correctly. It's never really out of the game, and as an example of that, I played against a really good Gargants player in the first game of the World Championships, where he killed like almost everything that I had, but just one by one. The Stonehorn was just like axing down a Gargant like one by one, and I managed to pull the game through by like a point or two or something crazy like that.
Wow.
And like I would say 75% of my list was dead while he still had all of his Gargants up. So it was not looking good, but it can come back 100%.
Right.
And then cons, generally it doesn't directly counter anything, so you're never going to walk up to the table and be like, oh, this is an easy matchup, I win, right? You're not going to counter anyone. So that can be a little bit difficult to deal with. And then usually it has one tool or unit that isn't useful at all for a particular matchup. So like another example would be like how Rule Boy's Grin and Blades just directly counter shooting. All of a sudden I have 200 points that aren't doing anything because the Ironblaster is just, not able to be used, essentially.
It's true. It's not a direct counter, but it's still super mobile, so you can get up in the business or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can still, capture points and stuff too.
Yeah.
It's not useless, but it's still, yeah. And the things that tend to be made either useless or not very useful are the Ironblaster, the Casters, or the Nobblers. There are some matchups where Nobblers are actually an active liability.
Yeah.
Which, or any screen is an active liability, and that's usually like techie armies. Like my game that I lost in the World Championships against the guy who won, actually, Nicholas Tasson, whatever, I can't remember his last name, Spoon. I made a mistake where I placed a big line of Nobblars, and then he was Lumineth Realm Lords, and he basically had like the Bravery checked spell where they can't move or do anything. Unless they pass a bravery check, and because they're bravery 4, he trapped me inside my own castle, which was really rough. So You have to be super careful about how you use them. Um, that's just an example of like how a tool in your toolbox can be used to like shoot yourself in the foot, essentially.
Hmm.
Yeah. Leviticus says, "Is this was it
Sons,
Sisters of
Sons of
Battle?
Ben.
Sons of
Sons of Ben.
Behemoth?
Yeah.
What you would call your list's toughest matchup? No. Um, I would probably say I don't know. Like I really don't like going into OBR in general. Anything that
Yeah.
has like a really good save
Right.
isn't great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
But
I could see maybe some Night Haunt lists potentially, ignoring all your rend and -1 damage.
yeah, but I
Um,
have a lot of attacks at low
and you're
rend.
doing mortal wounds too. Yeah,
Yeah.
out of phase. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
it's really going to be like I would say
Maybe really
I
strong shootings list, like maybe the new city stuff.
cities is scary.
Mm,
Um, cities is cities is an interesting army because I think it's like a jigsaw puzzle that has to be solved on deployment
right,
by the city's player. If they
right.
set up everything perfectly, then it's gonna kill almost everything. I
Mm,
think like it's gonna be really hard to get like deal with. But chances are the city's player is gonna make some kind of
mm.
mistake in their deployment. And an example of that is I played against one of our clubmates, Eric, where he hosted me. And granted, he's just starting out city, he's still figuring out the army. But I opted to take the first turn and did enough damage and like did enough stuff where he didn't even want to take his first turn. Like
Jeez.
he, like it was pretty rough that game. Um, and I think that like that can happen with cities. I think if there's just like they don't properly quite set up their castle, if they're if everything isn't perfect, then they can really get messed up. But if everything is perfect, then it's super scary.
Yeah, yeah. I was, and Hewa says Glutton shred Night Hunt even without the Ren. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah,
I was trying to think of something else, but I couldn't really. I didn't come up with anything. Yeah, I think OBR is a really good point.
it's
Um,
kind of gotten to the point where like what I'm most afraid of is like a really good player playing an army that they're intimately familiar with, because like no matter what, that's going to be a tough matchup, always, right? And like OBRs certainly can be difficult, but like you know what to expect most of the time. There's no tricks or anything. But like an extremely good Zinch player like Matt Beasley, super scary to go up against. Um, yeah, it's just
I definitely do best against you with my Skaven. So
that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, yep. But yeah. Last but not least, what makes ogres competitive? What and this is like not I'm kind of out of like the whole stat crunching side of things. I'm not really going to be talking about like specifics anymore. This is just like general mantra of like what makes ogres competitive. Hero says impact hits are the Achilles heel for OBR in my opinion, but you're on a time limit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great
Um,
point because you need the amount of units available. So if they kill them off, then
yep,
yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
100%.
Carson makes ogres competitive. Eric says.
Yay.
Y'all.
Um, so number one, variety. Um, we
These
have
pictures
more.
are on point, dude. I gotta say.
We have more viable list archetypes than the average army. So like it's pretty rare to see an army that's like, oh, we have a good shooting archetype, we have a good melee only archetype, we have good monsters, we have good,
Mm,
like skew lists. Like there's actually a lot of variety in ogres. So it makes it really difficult for opponents to kind of figure out owners or ogres, quote unquote.
mm,
Um, so that it's not like they rock up to an ogre's table and be like, oh, this is what I should expect. It's not like you walk up to play Sylvaneth and you're like, okay, I'm probably gonna get Warsong bombed. Dirthu's probably gonna pop up and slap me and then strike and fade. You pretty much know what to expect. With ogres, it's like it could be kind of anything.
right.
Um, and like the tech that's involved changes a lot too, between these different archetypes. The second thing is that we also have variety in our threat projection. So it's generally not possible for an opponent to easily be free from ogre threats ever. So like what I mean by that is especially in combined arms, um, an opponent can opt to stay super far away, but I'm just taking pot shots at you with the Ironblaster. They can opt, get in your face, but then, I'm going to be charge mortaling you. I can be dealing a lot of damage in the strike back, and then if they're at mid distance, then that's where I can start setting up those charges to get the charge mortals. It's, you know, there's no easy answer against ogres. And then lastly, each archetype can be played in multiple ways. So monster trucks don't have to be charging constantly. You can play the objective game just as well because you're counting as 10 on objectives. You can steal them super easily. If you auto run a monster truck, it's going to be like 20 inches just zooming across the board. And then if you do have to charge, it's 14 inches by, a 2d6 plus 1 or plus 2 maybe charge. Flying 18 inches, like you're just everywhere, right? So you can be super mobile. You don't have to play just directly punching them in the face. So that's a big thing. Next, simplicity. Playing ogres is not complicated.
What the hell? Where did you get that, by the way? Did you find... Okay.
Yeah, they're not a particularly complicated army to play. Sorry, I was about to say difficult, which is like any army can have a super high skill ceiling.
Yeah.
Just because of the core rules and whoever you play against. But you don't have to focus, and they're easy to learn, so you can kind of take the mental load off and learn far more about the game itself and the opponents that you play against. So you don't really have to worry about spending a whole bunch of time figuring out like, oh, if I do this and this and this and do these combos with the ogres, that's what's best. It's pretty easy to figure that out initially, and then spend a lot more mental load figuring out like what are my opponent's battle tactics, what are the common things that I'm going to be seeing in a tournament, and they're super easy to underestimate is a big thing that I've learned too. Opponents will often shrug off ogres as not really meta, and they're generally surprised when they get eated. Like it catches them off guard a lot when you have like one unit of gluttons that just eats a pretty substantial hero or hammer or something like that when they weren't expecting it to, because they're thinking just, oh, it's just standard ogres, it's not going to be a big deal. So you can really catch people off guard.
The thing I like the most about it is how you stayed true to the proper grammar, and used the correct term, get eated.
Yeah, I appreciate you appreciating that. So thank you.
Excellent.
Next up is something that I kind of live by, which is medium risk, high reward.
So good. Yeah.
Ogres are the kings of leveraging medium risk situation, and what that means is if you fail in this situation, it's a little bit rough for you. It's not like it doesn't matter. It's going to hurt a little bit, but if you succeed, your opponent loses. And what I mean by this, here's a classic example: is you have an opponent who is got a valuable thing that's pretty far away, and maybe it's not smart to move the entire distance super close to that model, but you want to sit at 11 or 12 inches away or something with a unit of gluttons. Then you decide to do something which is okay, I'm going to roll this charge just to see what I get. If I get an 11 or 12, that hero's dead and you're screwed.
Yeah.
If I don't get an 11 or 12, these gluttons are kind of out of position and they might get hit maybe later. Those kind of situations, especially when you have multiple sources of threat, can usually be the difference between you getting a 4-1 and a 5-0 at a tournament. Because if you have redundancy in medium risk, high reward, it's just extremely difficult for your opponent to deal with. And that's what ogres are extremely good at.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, most armies, the higher the reward, the higher the risk as well. Here, that's just really not the case. You do have to lean into a certain play style and to a certain extent, but yeah, no, it's a very good point. I like it.
Yeah. And then lastly, this is kind of the last slide I have, just general tips for tyrants. I've got ogre tips and I've got general tips. Ogre tips are going to be...
So this isn't just tips on using how to use your tyrant.
Yes.
Okay.
This is in general when you play.
Cool.
Number one, exercise medium risk, high reward. As I just talked about before, experiment with it too. Play against your friends and see, if you do things like that, does it throw them off? And just look at the outcomes. Number two, be more reserved than you think you should be. I think that a lot of people are just going to be marching their entire army forward and charging as much stuff as they possibly can. Play around with staying back. Play around with doing absolutely nothing for 3 turns and watching your opponent trying to figure out how to deal with that.
If you're new to the game, though, it really should be pointed out. If you're new to the game, be more reserved in general.
Yes. Yeah. Number 3 for ogre tips: leverage varied threat projection. We have a huge amount of access to different forms of threat projection via, stone horns and gluttons and iron guts and
spells,
spell damage,
charge,
shooting,
movement. Oh, yeah.
Play around with more different types of that. Even if you're in an Underguts list, maybe it's okay to bring a Stonehorn.
Yeah.
If you're in a maybe if you're in a Monster Trucks list, maybe it's okay to bring an Ironblaster, right? Play around with that sort of stuff. And then the fourth one is reread the core rules, because we forget. You have the time. You've already learned your rules. It didn't take very long, so you should reread the core rules to really get intimately familiar with them. Because I still catch people all the time, like making like just small mistakes, like not intentional at all, but just like small things. And I catch myself too, and people catch me. Like, you'll never 100% learn them, so getting used to them is going to make you a better player in general, and especially as an ogre player, because you can afford to spend the time to do that.
Right. Yeah, reread the core rules and read the FAQs, the general FAQs as well. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Keith says, I enjoy games where you can just go, I wonder what happens if I do this. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it can be really devastating too. General tips. Ask to play against your worst matchups. If you have something that you absolutely dread playing, like maybe you just haven't figured out Glutkin Nurgle, it's just really difficult for you to deal with, find a friend or someone in your local area that plays that thing, and like opt to play more games against that, because chances are there's a way around it. The second thing is, regardless of the game's outcome, you should always ask what you could have done better to your opponent. There have been games where I absolutely like smoked someone and asked this question still, and it's still just as valuable to know like things that you could have done to smoke them even harder. But
you know what?
You can always learn something.
People are, as a general rule, they want to tell you, like, most people feel like they know what they're doing, So, and sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nails. We've all been the nail at some point, but it didn't mean you didn't think at a certain point, like, oh man, like if he had done this at this point, it would have been way worse for me. But like, why would you volunteer that information? Like, you'd have to have a pretty big chip on your shoulder to say that without that kind of thing. So and these, like, you put general tips here. I thought you meant general tips for I don't know why. Yeah, absolutely. These are all great tips. Fantastic tips. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing is that sometimes you can accidentally win a game by a huge margin just because dice rolls were hot. That happens, right?
Yeah.
And you might have actually done something kind of stupid that your opponent was expecting not to go your way, but it did, even though it was like a 5% chance of happening or something, right?
Yeah, so true.
So, and then the third one is stress test an idea 3 times before abandoning it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably like the opposite of that, where I'm just like, ooh, I gotta play like 12 times with this list before I realize I want to make the change. Like, I've sent Alex in our club like panic messages at midnight just because I was thinking about changing a command trait for a tournament that's like a month away or something. Meanwhile, people are like completely changing their lists, their factions, red alliances, even like bouncing around a ton. I think that you really can't understand how good something is until you've tried it against I tried it in not only 3 games, but 3 different opponents and 3 different armies as well.
100%. Yeah.
Because like spikes can happen. Maybe you just so happen to have rolled those 9-inch charges for the new Gorger unit every single time, and you have to get punished sometimes for not being able to do that. And if the first time that happens is in a tournament, then it's going to be a hard lesson. And then lastly, always respect your opponent, and that means, as a person, of course, like you want to be kind and you want to respect them, but also you should never walk up to a game not having have heard of someone or like expecting them to do badly and just be like, this is going to be easy. Like, you always have to assume that someone is capable of like absolutely like dropping the elbow on you. Give them the respect they deserve as a player, because if you don't, then chances are they're going to surprise you.
As a Skaven player, I heard that as be afraid of everything and everyone.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay. Okay, sure. Good.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yep. Halo says the game has enough variance that you don't want to immediately negatively bias yourself. Negativity bias yourself out of considering a new unit after 1 game. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
we've been talking about that for a while.
Yeah.
And it's so true, because like you already covered it, but those spikes happen one way or the other. You can spike really poorly. Everyone's talking about how awesome Alopexes are, just mass alapexes. And I've played 2 games now where they have done very poorly for me. but like I know that they're good. Like I know that they're good. You know what I mean? But like I got to play at least one more game before I make any kind of conclusion. And yeah, it might have just been I was playing the wrong opponent. You know what I mean? Or list or whatever. So yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to be careful about what you try new stuff with too. Like a personal anecdote is that I also have Slaves to Darkness, and I was trying out lists for them. But almost exclusively, my practice partner was our clubmate Matthias, who is like on Team Canada, goes to like AOS Worlds every year, like always top 10 player on ITC. And I'm just like, maybe if I'm trying new things against him every time, and he's just smoking me with his best lists, like this isn't like I should value like the gains that I get as opposed to just losing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing that they talk about a lot. Like, I'm really into fighting games, and they talk about playing people that are at approximately at your level, and like that could apply to a new army. Like, I'm not gonna I've owned FEC for a long time, but now there's a new book coming out, so it's like a whole new thing. And so, like, if I take them against like your championship winning ogres list, you know what I mean? Like it's probably going to be a bad time for me because I haven't figured it out, and I'm not going to like understand what's really going on the table, right? But yeah, no, I like it. That's a really good point.
Yep.
Except always respect your opponent. That's idiotic. But
yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah, you're stupid.
That's pretty much it.
Cool.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you have any questions whatsoever, like that's the end of what I got slides wise. What is that? 122 slides. So
short 122 slides.
Just a short, brief overview of Ogre Mawtribes.
You need 2 more slides, and then it's like 12 packs of. Oh no, that'd be 144. Never mind.
Yeah.
Withdrawn, Your Honor. Withdrawn. I didn't say anything.
Sustained.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I did you I know we got questions. Sorry, we were supposed to do this last week, and then family emergencies again. But like, do you get the questions from some of the people that they asked you like 2 or 3 weeks ago?
I didn't. No.
Okay, well
do you have them?
I can find them, but yeah, entertain people, Carson. I thought I sent them to you. One second.
What's funny is as soon as you said that, I like lost the window that Google Meets was in, and I was muted, and I was like, oh.
I think. Also,
I'm just gonna.
Oh, this. Okay, good.
Stop sharing here. And
I'm glad I'm not bringing up private information here. Once again, let's see. Man, Patreon is a terribly laid out website. Actually, I can't seem to find messages. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I literally can't.
Did you send them to me at some point?
I did, but it's been a while. Yeah, like there's no community. Oh, direct messages. Okay. Okay. So, I'm sorry. I know I looked it up. I think it's Calais is how you pronounce it. So he says, how do you deal with cavalry heavy armies with good or great saves as an ogre player, i.e. facing Stormcast Eternals with Fulminators, with Gardist and Ionis and other stuff, or Varanguards and Nurgle Knights and Slaves to Darkness? I have lost several games to a friend of mine, and I would like to get some tips to someday beat him. I understand it also depends on terrain and battle plan, but if he has some pointers, it would be welcome. And then, so that's the first question.
Yeah. It's all kind of, so generally when you have something that's got an excellent save and moves super fast, there's a trade-off of some kind, and usually that it's very high points value.
Yeah.
And a lot of these things also have benefits for like being better on the charge. And they usually have targets that they want to go after that are much better. So like a cavalry heavy list, the benefit of it is that you can move around. You're very agile. You can move around and you can kind of hit something that's squishy. And kind of what you want to do against that is you have this excellent tool, the Stonehorn, who is just as fast, if not faster, just as tough, if not tougher, than those hammers. Pin those units, and then also deal as much damage as possible. Give the rest of your army a decent amount of time to kind of reposition to be able to smack them,
Right.
and then yeah. So it's basically just about kind of like keeping everything else reserved as you manage to pin those units, and then come deal with them after they've either killed your Stonehorn or it's been like you get a double turn or something, right?
Right.
Another thing is that you can usually muscle lists like that off of objectives pretty well. So if you take like OBR for instance, that has excellent saves, they don't really count for a lot on objectives. So like one game that I remember, especially in Emerald City Open, was I was playing against like the standard, like still fully buffed, fully recursive OBR list that was like Null Myriad, and he was dominating me the entire game. But because I was able to just like sneak, 5-point turns constantly, deny him getting even like 4-point turns just because I was like capturing all of the objectives, I ended up winning by 1 point anyway. So sometimes it's not about killing them. Sometimes it's just about playing the points game too. If you realize it's not a fight that you can win.
That's true. And I know my advice or whatever isn't as valuable, nearly as valuable, but if you're looking at like a good save value, like i.e. Stormcast, you can lean into the mortal side, into the charge phase and whatnot. If you're looking at something with a lot of mortal wound protection, you can also look into better rend and things like that. Like Varangard are, as Keith talks about, that can be very difficult to learn to deal with. They have a 4 up against mortals. So in the charge phase, like it's almost worthless trying to get more mortal wounds on the charge, but you can definitely, put Hoarfrost or something on a unit with a high damage value and, and see the money. Yeah.
One issue with Varangard though is that they are super high costed.
They are. Yeah.
And certainly they'll wipe the screen, get to fight again, step forward and wipe something else. But you can set yourself up in a way that's like pretty non-conducive to them being able to do that. Number one is that you put your screen so far forward that them fighting twice doesn't really make sense for them to be able to do.
Yeah, like 6 inches or something. And
yeah. Exactly. Number two, which is something I really like to do, is you take your big line of Noblars, and then you can put your Gluttons or your Iron Guts or whatever you want within 3 inches of the front of the Noblars, such that they can pile in
right
and hit something that hits the front of them.
Right.
Outside of 2 inches of the front of the Noblars, so you have like 1 inch of play, which is actually quite a bit. Then what happens is these Varangard come and charge in. They hit your Noblars, they'll probably wipe them or deal a ton of damage to them. Then all of a sudden your Gluttons can say, okay, we're going to step forward and slap you now. And even though they're pretty tough, like a 3-up save,
right,
25 attacks, 3s, -1/2 damage, you're probably going to kill a Varangard or two.
Right.
And they're extremely like points dense. So each one that you kill is going to be, that much less damage that you're taking. And now you've stuck this unit in that really wants to be maneuvering around and striking something weaker at full strength.
Yeah, they don't want to be in combat because then they can't rally on the 5s or whatever they get. So yeah, that's a great point. Okay, I will pull up the other question. What do you think is the best ogre Excuse me. What do you think is the best ogre army to play as a beginner? BCR with a mix of Stonehorns and Thunder Tusks, a Meat Fist Gutbuster army, an Undergut shooting army, or a mix of everything like you play? Yeah, that's the question.
What do I think is the easiest or the best for a new player?
What do you think is best? The best I guess he means the best subfaction or composition as a beginner.
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer because like it changes for each person's like preferred playstyle.
Right.
Me as a player, I like to have a toolbox available. I don't like to be restricted by skewing in any one direction or the other.
Right.
Some players love to skew. They love to be like all shooting. They love to be all like monster perks and stuff like that. I actually don't think that my list is particularly beginner unfriendly. So if you like toolbox armies too, absolutely give it a shot. If I had to go based on like what is the like easiest to just like pick up and play, that'll probably get decent results. Probably monster truck spam like Beast Claw Raiders. Um, just because at the end of the day, like you're still slamming into your opponent as fast as you can. Uh,
Right.
it's a low skill floor, high skill ceiling kind of subfaction.
That's a really great one. I agree because, like you said, like you're starting with the low floor, but you have so far to grow. It's like it's almost like the perfect army to get into Age of Sigmar with. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, definitely not wrong. He said, Halo says the game at a basic level isn't terribly difficult, so you don't think easiness should matter too much. It's true. I think it probably will depend on what you're attracted to. Like, do you just really like the look and feel of monster trucks, or do you like shooting? I mean, I think honestly, in general, like anytime you're trying to figure this out, this is like a common question across all armies. I mean, like every Facebook group, and it's a really common question. And I think the best thing you can possibly do is proxy. Just use the bases. Just buy a bunch of bases. You can buy them really cheap. Cut them out of cardboard if you have to, or whatever, and find someone who like you probably have a Johnny friend who's going to be like, yeah, I don't care, just like write whatever the thing is on top of the base, and then let's figure it out together. And you can kind of bring people in, and if you kind of make people feel like they're part of your journey, I generally find that most people are happy to help. And so yeah, proxy before you go like spend like 100 hours painting something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hey, was it something in the chat that I agree with, which is you'll grow into whatever you choose.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm kind of going to change my answer and say that if you're new to the game and you're not really sure which direction that you want to go, ogres are actually really lucky in that a list like mine actually works and does pretty well. So if you play a list like mine, it has a little bit of everything, and you'll really easily be able to pick out parts of it and say, like, I really like that unit, I really don't like that unit, and then you can kind of build what you want based on that. Because I have a little taste of Ironblaster, a little Stonehorn, a little bit of Gluttons, and a little bit of casting, like a little bit of everything. So someone could be able to see like which aspects of that list that they like. So it's actually probably pretty good for a beginner to try that one.
Right. Yeah. And like another thing that, we often talk about in like the fighting game community and stuff like that is that if you, and this might sound like a cop out. So if you don't, but like if after all of that, you didn't get any advice that really applies to you, I would say play whatever you like the most. Like genuinely like, if it's the models, if it's the lore, it doesn't really matter. If there's something that you really grab a hold of, what attracted you to the army in the first place, that's the most likely thing to keep you in the game, keep you painting, keep you playing, and therefore improving. And so yeah, like that's if there's something you're grabbing onto, even if you don't know why, just take it and go, as Russell Peters would say. Take it and go.
Yes. Any other questions?
I think that was the last one. One second, let me just check and make sure, because there was another new patron and I can't remember. I think he might have also joined for Ogres, but okay, no, he's not. He's here for Nurgle and for Skaven, so I've got one of those two covered for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, we've set a new record, friend.
Longest stream
By a country freaking mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, our longest was 3 hours before, and about 3 hours. We're almost at 4. What is up? And there was almost no wasted time at the start of this thing too. Thanks to everyone for joining us. This was, we're something that's been planned for a while, and really appreciate Carson putting in all that work with that ridiculous amount of slides and all the funny jokes. It was really good, man. I think that was great.
Thanks. Time for me to go with 05 at LVO. If you're going, I'll see you there. If I do see you there, if you want to come say hi, absolutely do so. I'll give you some dice, and I'll have a beer with you. Absolutely, always happy to do that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. It's awesome that people want to hear about ogres.
Yeah, 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 man. Yeah, for real. Like a lot of people in the chat the whole time. This was great. You guys were being really funny as well. And sorry if we didn't, I just saw stop eating shark fin soup. They're doing it out of spite, Rob. Like I didn't even see that Leviticus, so I'm sorry if we missed some of the comments. We were trying to keep it tracked, but it's also it's a balancing act. Yeah, but thanks to everyone for watching. We are doing a show, I believe, on Boxing Day next week. Okay, cool.
Yep. No idea what it's going to be about, but we'll do a show. Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about the year in review. Like it's a good time to do it. The last show of the year, just kind of like what we thought was good that happened, and maybe the stuff that wasn't so hot. But
yeah, we'll be in our onesies, opening up boxes of Warhammer.
I need a onesie.
Sitting not behind the tree, by the tree. Sorry.
It's just a tree in front. Oh my god, that's actually. Oh man, maybe we'll do that, and maybe we won't, but I hope we do. Eric said it best though: meat, 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 meat. So, thanks to everyone for joining, and if you made it this far, maybe consider subscribing and liking and checking other stuff out. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.